Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We will be joining Mr. Kev Baker here in just a moment. And I just figured, hey, you know what? We'll go ahead and loop everybody into the stream this evening. I don't know what we're going to get into. I think we're going to get into gray aliens. We're going to get into interdimensionals and much, much more. We're also going to talk a little bit about AyaLife, which is the reason why he wanted to have us on initially. And then we're going to get into some of the what he calls woo-woo stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it. Let's see if we can connect with Kev Baker here in a moment.
Definitely something strange going on with the weather, and who knows if the Corexit was the culprit in the beginning of making that happen. I don't know. But I do know this. The weather has been strange.
I actually managed to cut myself off there. I don't know how I'd done that. It was all the excitement. We've got our special guest joining us tonight. Just before we get there, I just want to say, Jimmy, the Corexit definitely probably added to that. But the point I was making was that for 10 years prior to that, they had noticed that this thing was slowing down anyway. So it looks like we're just entering one of these cooling periods, but it's nothing to be scared of, folks. It's not. We're not talking about, the total day after tomorrow scenario. We're just looking at a lowering of the temperatures as opposed to, what Al Gore tried to sell us on all those years ago. And we will keep our eye on that. But without any further ado, we've wasted, 16 minutes already? I think it's about time, Jimmy. I have got our good friend here, Mr. Chris Geo. Welcome back, brother. I mean, this is 2 shows now in the space of a couple of months. This is really good, Chris.
I know you're going to get in trouble for this, Kev.
Well, I'll probably get banned from this dimension in the next, but there's nothing new there, Chris.
I know. It was amazing. Last time we did a show, we were banned in, 250 countries, and there's only, I think, 170 or something like that, so we were banned in extra countries.
Yeah, even people that were having the most violent of Mandela effects had to admit that there was something far wrong, and there's never been 250 countries in this world. But it just shows you that was the kind of importance of the information that we were talking about that night. And in particular, we were talking about your mission that you and Sheree went on over to Egypt to reset the matrix. Now, I want to revisit a couple of topics and go deeper on them as we progress, Chris. But one of the main reasons I really wanted to get you on tonight, and we can spend the rest of this segment on it, we've got 10 minutes, is the fact that, there's something out there right now, and I'm surprised we can get this in the UK as well. And I call it a wonder drug. I truly do. And that is CBD oil. Now, you hear about so many different variants, so many different companies, but you yourself, sir, you and Sheree, you were kind enough to send me a sample of AyaLife. Now, let me just assure the listeners that compared to the very weak and watered-down CBD oils that we get in the UK, this stuff was the bomb. And I had said to you, Chris, I have trouble sleeping at nights, and I would take it after my show. And I'm not any doctor, so I didn't do any medical tests to confirm it was the AyaLife having the effect. However, that said, when I was taking the AyaLife, I was getting a better sleep. So that tells me everything, dude. But how did you get into this whole AyaLife, Chris?
Well, thank you for saying that, Kev. I really appreciate it. And the feedback that we have received on Facebook has been tremendous. Like, I'm thinking back in hindsight now, and I wish I would have programmed something into the website to where people can leave their reviews there, because it'd be really nice to have them all in one place. We still need to add them to the website. But AyaLife, we first started trying to find ways to help Sheree with her pain. And I actually went into the ayahuasca realm several times. And in the ayahuasca realm, I essentially downloaded a recipe for making something that would help her. And it's a fusion of CBD, which is the extract from the hemp plant. It can be extracted from marijuana as well, but technically it's not supposed to be extracted from marijuana. So just a heads up there, it's extracted from hemp. It's a 99% pure CBD that's extracted from the hemp plant. Now, we make sure that it's THC free so we can ship it anywhere in the world. We're required by law to put contains less than 0.03% THC. And I wrote them back and I said, hey guys, it's got 0% THC. And they're like, well, we still need that particular type of statement and things like that. So all kinds of banking requirements and all kinds of nonsense that they make you jump through, all these hoops that they make you jump through. But when we put this out, we decided to infuse it with the ayahuasca vine as well, because the ayahuasca vine is the healer plant down in South America, in Peru, when you do the ayahuasca tea. There's two components to it. There's the aya vine, and then there's the chacruna. The chacruna contains the DMT. So obviously that's not going to be in AyaLife. But they consider that the healer, the ayahuasca vine itself. So we took the components of the healer plant, mixed it with the hemp plant, and also infused it into USDA certified organic coconut oil. Everything is USDA certified organic, or it's organically grown. Like with hemp, they can't certify USDA certified, but we do get it from organic growers. So we've like really looked at every single detail when it comes to this, even down to the way the bottle is designed, and you open it up and you have a meter dropper. Because one of the things that I noticed from using a bunch of other CBDs is that I never knew how much I was taking. So, I mean, even those little details there. But what I noticed is that I was really reluctant to take the CBDs when I was getting them from other suppliers, because it tasted horrible. It tasted like grass, and it had this funky taste to it, almost like an alcohol ether kind of taste. And I realized as we started getting into this, I mean, this was 2 years in the making, about a year and a half in the making. From the time that we got the recipe from the ayahuasca realm to the time that we actually put it out there. And I realized that there are several different ways to extract the CBDs out of the hemp plant. And a lot of people are using alcohol. A lot of people are using solvents just simply because it's so much cheaper. What we do is we do a CO2 extraction to make sure that we get all of the active components out, and we can also separate it from the THC. And so it really is 100% THC free. And the result is that we know exactly how much is in each bottle. See, with the traditional hemp oils, hemp it varies in potency. It can have 2% CBD, it can have 3% CBD, it can have 8% CBD. Some people are honest on their bottles, and it'll say contains 8% CBD or 12% CBD or something like that. But they'll put on their label and say, this is a 2,500 milligram strength bottle, and you take it and it doesn't do anything for you. And I realized what they're doing is they're counting all the oils, they're counting all the fats, they're counting literally everything to get to that dosage. And when we put this together and we put on our label, it has 350 milligrams of CBDs. We mean 350 milligrams of CBDs, not 350 milligrams of hemp, not 350 milligrams of quote unquote active ingredient. It's 350 milligrams of CBDs. The result is that people feel it immediately. They'll take it at night and they're able to sleep, or they'll take it in the morning and they have more energy. I realized what this does is this really brings people back to a point of balance. It's not that it's trying to heal any particular type of ailment, but rather what it's doing is it's bringing that person back to balance. So it helps with everything. It helps with inflammation. It helps with sleep. It helps with depression. It perks people up that need to be perked up. But we recommend that people start with a half dose, because we have found that it's so much stronger than what people are used to, that one dose it might be a little too much. Like you'll take it and then just go, you know what, it's bedtime, I'm going to bed. Or you start to get jittery or something like that because it's very potent. And people have been writing back with the most phenomenal reviews. I mean, everything from people who have Parkinson's, to people who have been depressed, to people who haven't been able to eat, to people who are sleeping too much. I mean, the reviews on Facebook have been phenomenal. And we haven't solicited reviews. That's the thing. People are just sharing their experiences because they want to share this product with other people because it works so well for them. So it's really, really, really been amazing. And we just got the first review about Parkinson's just a couple of days ago, and Sheree read it on air. And apparently the woman who wrote it and purchased it, it was for her husband who has Parkinson's. And she said for the first time, he's been able to sleep through the entire night. No shakes, nothing like that. So we hadn't tested it out with Parkinson's or anything like that. But we did get some feedback finally about it. And I'm just so thrilled that it's working so well for everybody out there. I couldn't have asked for a better recipe.
That's what I'm talking about, dude. I mean, we talk about so many things on the show here, but we often fall back to solutions. And when you're telling me that people, you know, somebody out there experiencing Parkinson's has literally had a life-changing experience through this, that in itself is very indicative of why I call this kind of thing a wonder drug. And, you know, it's been kind of withheld from us for so long. And I'm still surprised that over here in the UK, and for any UK listeners out there, please pay attention. The AyaLife and CBD oils are perfectly legal now. You can go and buy the horrid brand in Holland and Barrett. And I say it's horrid because my mum gave me some, Chris. And this was like drinking, it was like the oils of a really bad cannabis resin that they had extracted somehow. It was enough to make you feel sick. Now, I don't
So you know what
any-
I'm talking about, that nasty taste.
Vile, man.
This stuff tastes like coconut and raspberries. We were so
Yep.
specific with the taste. What that is a bad extraction process, and they're just extracting it any old way and just throwing it in a bottle and just putting it out there. There's no quality control, nothing like that. It's so frustrating to hear these kind of experiences from people because we know what goes into it. We know what can be done with it if it's done proper. It takes more time, takes more money up front, all that stuff, but the outcome is so much worth it. I wish other companies would follow suit.
So we will find out where you can get a hold of AyaLife when we come back from the break. And then I'll be getting Chris to take us to the 13th. Find out more after the break. Don't go anywhere, folks. Remember to share this network far and wide. TFRlive.com, where silence is consent. And we'll be right back.
I don't want to get copyright from his music, so I was pausing it for a second.
Did you get your
All right,
coffee?
you there? Hey, yeah, no, I muted you because I don't want to get copyright on YouTube.
Ah,
From your,
yes. So did you
your
get your
bumper
coffee
music.
all sorted for the show, man?
I did. Yes. Thank you for having
Can
us
do
on.
without coffee, dude.
I'm gonna go
Cannot
ahead.
do-
I'm gonna go ahead and make a coupon code for the Kev Baker show real quick.
Nice.
Yeah, that way we can offer your people something special.
My peeps.
Your
I've
peeps.
had some good feedback from a couple of my listeners about it too, Chris. I've been talking about it too on my show.
Oh,
Yeah,
excellent.
Compared with the British stuff over here, it's honestly, it's disgusting. And it's not only that, it is extortionate. It's criminal what they try to charge for this stuff, man.
Oh, the
Like-
I mean, we look at similar bottles, and this, and it doesn't even come close to this quality. $80 a pop, $90 a pop.
I
It's
know,
like
some of it's wild, man.
they're robbing people, and I mean, essentially, what we did is we found a market that really needed some structure and needed somebody to do it the right way, and we just stepped in and just did it the right way.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I know there's a few more companies popping up over here, but the fact that they've only got Holland and Barrett really to compete with, people are still going to get ripped off, Chris.
Yeah, I know. It's the nature of the beast, but
Yeah.
that's why we do what we do, and it
Exactly.
really helps people. It really does.
It definitely helped me get a little sleep. I must admit, my mind never slows down, man. It rarely slows down. So that's quite wondrous in itself.
I went and talked to that retail store about how you get products in there, and basically what the guy told me, Chris, in California, was that they only deal mostly in these cannabis stores. They deal in stuff with THC in it. So it sounds to me like you'd be able to maybe just go into a regular health food store. Like there's a 3-store chain that's over here that I might be able to go talk to just to see if they'd be interested in checking it out. Because it sounds to me like
that would be awesome, man. I mean, like, I'm not a business minded kind of person. And, you know, somebody would probably, like a business guy would probably look at the price point here and what goes into it and go, no, you're selling it way too cheap. But, you know, it's about helping people and getting it out to people. But I really need to try to find some kind of business mind within myself to really get this out to as many people as possible.
Here we go, boys. Here we go.
Yeah.
Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, interdimensional creepers, whoever you are, wherever you are. I want to thank you for tuning in to tonight's Kev Baker show right here on tfrlive.com. And before the break, we were talking about AyaLife, and that's 99% pure CBD hemp oil infused with the spirit of Aya. And Chris, I think you're working on a little treat for any of the KBS audience that are listening tonight and may be tempted, right?
Yes. You know, like I was saying during the break, the price point of everything is already really low for what it is. If you look at something similar that may not even come close to the quality, you're looking at $80, $90 a bottle easily for this. We have this priced at $49, and then we have volume discounts too. The biggest seller is a 6-pack that we sell, and I think that's like $40 a bottle or something like that. But I'll tell you what we'll do for the KBS audience. We'll take $10 off of the price of a bottle so the KBS audience can check it out. Use coupon code KBS. That's it. All lowercase KBS at your checkout. And you can get that at AyaLife.com. That's AYALife.com.
Absolutely fantastic. So remember, folks, this is the first time we've had any kind of coupon code kind of deal happening here on KBS. So head on over to AyaLife.com. And I've checked this stuff out. I absolutely loved it. Doesn't taste minging. If you're in the UK, it's really important to say that, because over here we're so used to drinking something that looks like it's come out of a puddle of oil. This stuff, it's absolutely night and day. There's a nice hint of, I got coconuts off it. Chris says it's coconuts and raspberries. I think Anne told me she got coconut and strawberry flavour off it. So yeah, this is the way to go, folks. Please, please, please check that out. Now then, you mentioned ayahuasca during the first segment, Chris, and I went to see David Icke not long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about his own ayahuasca experience over in Peru. Now, during your time working with ayahuasca, you started to talk about something, and it really caught my attention because I'm into the quantum physics and all this kind of stuff, but you were mentioning the 13th dimension. Now, when I talk about dimensions, I'm probably coming at it from an entirely different and probably wrong standpoint, because I'm going down the road of the academic science. And what would they know about the nature of reality and consciousness, really? Because when they use dimensions, usually it's just to make the maths work. But you're somebody that does talk about the 13th dimension, and it took you a while to talk about it because you weren't really fully aware of what this was, even when you were starting to experience it, right?
You're absolutely right. We set out to go to Egypt, as we talked about in the last show, and I didn't realize what we were there to do. I knew we needed to touch the stones and more information would be revealed once we touched them. But the doors started opening up for us to be able to fulfill what we knew needed to be fulfilled, which was to essentially go up to the control panel and hit the reset button on the Matrix. But it was much more extensive than that. It was just my own foolish mind thinking it was going to be much simpler than what it turned out to be. But once we got there, I was surprised to not only hear the message loud and clear that it's go time right now, but also for all of the doors to open up for us, including the Temple of Hatshepsut, the Temple of Isis. We had access to Karnak Temple if we wanted, but we didn't have time. Things were just moving too quickly for us to be able to do a ceremony at Karnak Temple as well. But we had full overnight access to the Great Pyramid, and including all three chambers to go to the subterranean chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the King's Chamber. And if I can take it back to AyaLife here for just a moment, what we did is we sent out crystals to everybody that were energetically connected to these crystals that we placed all over Egypt. So we put crystals at the Temple of Hatshepsut within the walls. We put crystal in the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid, in the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. We put crystals in the Temple of Isis, in the Holy of Holies. And since we had exclusive access to these places, we were able to dig around and make sure these crystals not only were in a place to where they won't be messed with, but in a place to where nobody can even get to them. Like in the Temple of Sekhmet, for example, in Karnak, we were able to stick our hands inside of the wall and drop it within the wall. So until that wall comes down, that crystal is always going to be there. So each person that ordered AyaLife also got an energetic crystal, and we're still keeping this tradition going, and we're sending out a crystal with every order. And what these crystals do is they create this energetic network amongst all of us, and we're just creating basically like an energy grid. So when we went to Egypt and went up to the 13th...
Before you get to Egypt, I have to throw this in here because synchronicity, huge part of TFR, right? And unbeknown to you, Jimmy Jeans introduced me to a topic last week, and we dived headfirst down the rabbit hole into something called psychotronics. Now, psychotronic energy, we were learning, can be stored in crystals, funnily enough.
Right.
And when we were doing our study, we were finding out how this psychotronic energy, it's basically the connection between us all, between objects such as crystals as well. So I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I just thought it was really key with everything we've been talking about, that this just follows on just so perfectly.
I got to tell you, Kev, my logical mind gets in the way sometimes, because I never really gave much credence to crystals beforehand. As a matter of fact, when I was in the ayahuasca realm and it was like, send out crystals to everybody, send it out to everybody, I was like, this is stupid. That's what I was thinking in my mind. But then as the network started to unfold and we started dropping these crystals everywhere, we were feeling the energy. And we knew we needed to touch the stones in Egypt, but we didn't know how the information was embedded within those stones. Well, we started touching stones and we were feeling information coming from some stones and no information coming from another. And we realized, look, there's crystals in these stones and there's no crystals in those stones. So the ones that didn't have any information, there were no crystals in. They would import over like around the Great Sphinx, limestone that was very specific to a swan. It's called a swan limestone. And they brought it all the way up there, which is like a 16-hour drive. I want to say it's like 1,000 miles away. So not only were they bringing rocks from the quarries 40 miles away, which were used to make the bricks of the Great Pyramid, which archaeologists say that's a huge feat. But now we have evidence of them bringing the stone from a swan 1,000 miles up. And they did it because it has 33% crystals in it. Yes, 33%. This is the way that it was explained to us. So there's that 33 number. Well, we go down to the subterranean chamber. Within the subterranean chamber, we start taking videos. Sheree looks and she starts pointing and saying, look, there's crystals all over the place. Nobody has footage of the subterranean chamber. We've never had any good pictures except for black and white pictures before. Nobody knew what the stones were. We brought a couple of stones back with us too. Chris wants us to have them analyzed, Everard, but I don't know if I can part with them. I mean, they're like so sacred, like nobody has anything like this. So we started talking about these crystals that were in the subterranean chamber and how the pyramid is essentially a device. So we did a 4-hour show with Chris Everard, and he said, you know what, I've speculated that this was all crystal-based energy, and you've just confirmed it with all your videos and the evidence that you brought back with you. So crystals play a huge role in this. And again, this, I don't know, you called it psychotronics or something like that. I've never heard this term before. I mean, I think I might have, but I never looked into it. And it's funny how all of this came so instinctually. It's like there was something inside that had all this information that was just, it was ahead of me. And then my logical mind caught up with it later. And the importance of these crystals too. So there you go.
I used to think it was all new agey. I suppose that's a pigeonhole that we like to put people in. But, it was Jimmy, and I have to credit Jimmy here. And you dropped in the chat room, and I think it's important for the audience to really learn what the people in Psychotronics refer to crystals as, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's super interesting, Chris, just simply because what we had found when we stumbled onto this Psychotronics, we were doing research into 5G. And I found this term called Psychotronics, and there's a U.S. Psychotronics Association. And so I started to get into it, and I looked at about 20 hours of videos, Chris, and there's literally a science that's been around for 40 years with documented results using the scientific process. They used something called an intention generator, where they took 4 meditators in a room who meditated on the intention of changing the pH in a glass of water. They then mailed this device, Chris, all the way to Germany from America, put it next to a glass of water, and changed the pH to exactly what they meditated on. And so what you guys have uncovered with these crystals is that these intentions and this information has been installed into these crystals, and you guys might have unlocked something so powerful. It's literally unbelievable. And especially, with the resonance you were talking about when you had the crystal, it's just unbelievable, man.
Wow. That is incredible. And it seems to be like a recurring theme in my journey that we'll instinctively figure something out, or something will come out of the ayahuasca realm, and then it'll be proven by science. Whether science has already proved it or not, it'll still come into my awareness after the fact. And it's really incredible. So when we went to the 13th dimension, to answer your question, Kev, I didn't realize what we were actually doing, but we were actually traveling up to the all-seeing eye of the pyramid. And it wasn't until we got back that I counted all of the steps on the back of the dollar bill, which is 13 steps, 13 dimensions. So what we did is we did our ayahuasca ceremony within the king's chamber, projected the consciousness up into the all-seeing eye, reprogrammed the all-seeing eye, made some system changes, and came back down. And it was brutal. But that's what I've come to term the 13th dimension. Now, it may not be 13, that may not be the right word for it. It could be an in-between dimension, or it could be a side dimension, or kind of a back room control panel kind of area. But I can tell you this, what it looked like, what it felt like was a plasma light energy, or plasma light existence. There was form, but it was formless. There was light, but it wasn't like a light that was blinding or anything like that. It was just this white area, and I could see these screens in front of me, and I could see my body as a plasmic body. And during the experiences, I was able to actually look back down, and it was almost as if I was looking through clouds or something like that. And I could see my body laying and shaking and convulsing in the sarcophagus. And I could see this ethereal tether that was tied from the sarcophagus all the way up to my body, to where I was working in the 13th density. But the thing about the 13th density, at least in this particular experience, was that it was such a disconnected, and I'm going to use the word unnatural, but it's not the best word, but it's the best one that I can think of. It's such an unnatural state, or maybe unfamiliar, that's a better word. It was such an unfamiliar state that it was very difficult to maintain the consciousness up in the 13th while at the same time remembering about the third density. And I came very close to almost breaking the tether and not coming back here, because what was happening in this experience was what was in front of me was the most important thing that was taking place. And so I was forgetting about Chris Geo. I was forgetting about my identity here. I was forgetting about Sheree. I was forgetting about literally everything. Like it was fading all from my consciousness. And as I was working up there doing the energy work, there was a push to stay up there and work as much as possible, complete what I needed to complete while I was there. And as I was doing that, the tether was breaking. And I've come to find out my body was actually out of control. It was shaking. It was banging up against the sides of the sarcophagus. My heart was, Sheree said it was reaching probably 180, almost 200 beats per minute at the time. And there were times when the heart would just completely stop. It happened, it was going on for like 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But this area here, what was interesting about it is not only was there a control panel, but there was also an exit door that I knew exactly where it led to. It led out of the matrix. It's the door that everybody has been looking for, but that has been locked up until this point. And the whole purpose of us going up to the 13th dimension was to try to reprogram, not try, it's my third dimensional self saying try. The 13th dimensional self's like, no, we did this. So to go up there and to reprogram the machine so we can have this exit door appear for us when it's time to go into these other realms. Up to this point, we've been stuck in the wheel of reincarnation. We haven't had a choice. We've been sucked right back in every single time. And it may not even be something that's like a forceful kind of recycling of the soul, but rather we find ourselves in this room. Sometimes it's white, sometimes it's black with clouds. And I can share a near-death experience with you that somebody shared with me that leads me even further into this conclusion. But we find ourselves in this state with nowhere to go. And so the only place that we can go after a certain amount of time is back into the machine, back into the wheel of reincarnation. Sometimes we're tricked into going in there by certain deities, entities, family members sometimes showing up and saying, here, come step into the light, step into this white light. This is, the afterlife and so on and so forth. And then boom, mind wipe. And we're recycled back into this machine. But let me share this.
Yeah, I always find that white light has almost been like the end of the birth canal again. You're basically going right back into the cycle, man.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I've heard that on a few shows before. And I have to ask you, the 13th dimension, it sounds like you really struggled to maintain any kind of balance there, Chris, for any long period of time. And I would imagine this is a frequency issue, right? Is it higher frequency or is it far lower? Is it dense? How did it feel to you? Do you have to raise your vibration or is it lowering?
It was definitely a higher frequency, but here's the interesting thing. I was able to get up to the 12th dimensions, no problem, almost like a rocket ship. I knew the way, all the doors were opening, I had all the passwords, I had the right vibrance, the right frequency, the right resonance, I was vibrating in the right way. And so I was able to get to the 12th, no problem, at the Temple of Isis and within the Great Pyramid too. But when I was told that the Great Pyramid was a rocket ship, or when I remembered, that's a better way, when I remembered at the Temple of Isis that the Great Pyramid was basically like a rocket ship or propulsion system for consciousness, I was expecting just that. But when I hit the 12th density and popped out of it, I found myself in this huge black void. Now, it's almost as if the frequency went up, and then when I hit this void, there was this denseness that I found myself almost swimming through this denseness. And I was having to push and push and push. And I saw this white ball way off in the distance, and I could tell that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. So I was struggling and pushing to get through and pushing to get through. But then I realized as I was getting closer and closer to this white ball of light that this white ball of light was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this wasn't an object that you can hold in your hand, which is what I was picturing before I even went into the experience, but rather it was an entire realm. But I realized that I was inside of another pyramid, which was an ethereal pyramid. And you can call this, I guess, the void, the abyss. Now, to answer your question about the density, the 13th was definitely a higher density place in the sense that everything was light, everything was plasma, everything was moving so much more easily and fluidly throughout the frequencies. But there was this area in between the 12th and the 13th that was extremely dense, like water would be dense, like trying to move through water or sludge. So that right there is really interesting how everything went higher, higher, higher dimension. and then it went into this dense dimension, and then it went back into the higher dimension again. So I think what was happening is that my resonance was vibrating up to that 12th density, and it was vibrating at that 12th density level, and then it hit this lower density. And maybe it's kind of like a security system or something that, like a border you're not supposed to cross, or
you use AI a lot when you describe this. How about a firewall?
A firewall. There you go. That's a great way to put it. And so yeah, it was an interesting experience, but it was definitely a higher vibrational frequency for sure.
Now, when you talk dimensions, Chris, the way I picture it, and it could be entirely wrong, but the way I visualize it, it's like the pages in a book. And I know you say you go up and down the dimensions, but I think you yourself would say that's not technically correct, is it? It's more like bubbles as opposed to dimensions stacked one on top of each other, right?
The way that I understand it, yeah, it's more like concentric circles, one around each other, and this is like dead center in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
The best way to describe it is up and down, though.
And it's funny you use the language that like a rocket ship for the pyramid, because Psychotronics as well, one of the practitioners, what she done with her husband was they built a very rudimentary kind of pyramid to hang over the bed. Now, it was just the four kind of sides going up to the apex and the base on it. And what they found, Chris, was that when they aligned this to true north and they went to sleep, it sounded akin to an ayahuasca experience. They basically felt like they were thrust into another realm. And if they just moved it off that true north just a slightly, it would absolutely dampen down the effects. They would still have a great sleep. It would feel like they're traveling, astral traveling. But when it was aligned to true north, it was like it was multiplied, magnified. And of course, the pyramid is aligned to true north, isn't it?
That's very interesting. I never thought about that. I never made that correlation. See, like I said, we've been going off of pure instinct and pure inner gnosis, and sometimes it doesn't surface to the logical brain until later, but that's pretty amazing.
Well, there's something else that might be unconnected, but I know the audience have heard me talking about Musk at length, and he's got something called these gigafactories. Now, he was building one in Nevada, I believe, and it's quite a famous speech now, but he's talking about how he specifically built the buildings so that they were shaped like a diamond. And he was very keen to emphasize that it must be aligned to true north. And he actually said it twice in the presentation, and not many people really seized upon it. And at the time, I found it quite good woo. Why is he aligning it north? But now with what you're telling me, what happens in the pyramid, and with the psychotronic information and the north being very key and pivotal to this, I think he's tapping into some natural energies that, we're talking about here tonight.
I think so. I'm going to have to dedicate some time to do some really hardcore research, because I think if I do some research into some of the information that you're talking about and others have come to the conclusion of, it'll help to tie in a lot of these experiences much more in my own personal mind, and maybe be able to elaborate on them much, much more. But it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And again, it's all just pure instinct. It's pure instinct. And maybe that's what was needed for my particular journey, because I can tell you this, Kev, when I get something out of the ayahuasca realm and then confirm it later, like we're confirming stuff right now, it makes it that much more real for me. And there's still parts in my mind that's just thinking, no, this was all just a big psychedelic experience. It was a hallucination. That's it. And maybe that's my three-dimensional self just trying to reconcile all of this. But everybody's feeling the veil being dropped. Everybody's feeling the dimensional shift that's taking place right now. But there is a negative aspect to this. And maybe we can get into this a little bit later. But there is a push to merge the dimensions together. And this has to do with grays. This has to do with Arcturians, with Palladians, with all of the stuff that we hear about. And the grays have been a huge, huge, huge problem going all the way back to ancient Egypt.
And we're definitely going to touch on that after the break, because I'm keen to get into that. But Jimmy, I want to bring you in here because, listening to Chris speaking tonight, it's almost as if, and we didn't plan this, but This is the perfect follow-up to the science that we were talking about coming out of the Psychotronic Association, right? And here's somebody who's basically practiced and lived all the kind of stuff that we were talking about last week. It might be different language that we use, but this is the same science, Jimmy.
It is, and what struck me, because I've done a lot of research over the years into Egyptology, civilizations in antiquity, and I've been particularly interested in frequency and vibration. And so there's been what I think what's really obvious to me is that Chris has intrinsic gnosis from what he's learned as going through the experience. And so I think what we found with the Psychotronics, and I know for me, this is what it put like this lexicon. There's a language associated with Psychotronic, which describes the energies that Chris has been in tune with intrinsically from his journeys. So they are able to measure this energy, and the science has been there for 40 years. So I think what you've learned on your own in conjunction when you get to have some of this other gnosis from these people, because this is an open society, everybody can add to what's going on. I mean, who knows? Maybe you even have something you can bring to the Psychotronics Association, because they welcome everyone. You can become a member today if you'd like to. It's really cool. They're up here in Oakland, so I'm gonna check it out
for $39.99.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. But you know what else? That I'm just thinking here. I mean, I've been on the network for a good few years now, and for no reason. I mean, there was no kind of falling out or anything like that. But we hadn't done a show in years, Chris, and yet now here we are. You've done all this work. Me on my separate path, I've stumbled into the science of psychotronics, and it feels to me that it's almost as if now's the time for us to knock heads again. And you will be dotting some of my I's. I'll be crossing some of your T's. And, all the things that you might be thinking or still might be kind of wary about, you might not know if it made sense when you were on your journey. I think all of that is going to start to become clearer. And we'll do that starting in hour number 2. Don't forget, coming up after tonight's show, Joe Joseph, the Book of Joah, will be opened right after Phoenix.
Sorry, I had to mute him. That's another one that flags the copyright. Oh, it drives me crazy. We need to get Kev some copyright-free music. And I wonder what happened to the little twin. Little twin, are you coming? I don't think she's coming. She's not feeling good. She got some bad news from the doctor. It's gonna be a journey.
Other computer?
Yeah.
Just fucking rebooted all by itself and came up with a bunch of Chinese language on the screen, and it said, and then in English it said, your computer is restarted because of a problem. I've never seen that before, ever. I mean, these computers literally have been shutting off by themselves and rebooting. I mean, I'm telling you, there's something weird going on here. It's fucking funny, dude.
I'm back.
Strange. Hello.
Yeah, I mute you guys during the outros.
Yeah.
That picture I dropped in the chat here, that's what I was talking about, the lady and her husband are using. And when it's aligned to north, they say it's like tripping out your box. It's basically you're in other dimensions. You don't dream anymore. You go to dreamland.
Well, check this out, dude. Something that I learned by making these organites is that if you made that pyramid right there out of copper pipe that you could buy at the hardware store, and you put a crystal at the top of that apex, and you line that to north, dude.
I think that's what they were doing, Jimmy, was it not? One of her presentations, I think she talks about the crystal, doesn't she? I think. Yeah.
Is that one that they have there?
Sorry?
I can't see if this one's copper.
It looks copper.
Yeah, it is.
Look at, yeah.
Fucking hey, man.
I mean, Chris, it's interesting, and a lot of the stuff she talks about and they talk about, I mean, you're talking about the men that stare at goats kind of stuff, that whole kind of psi energy.
Totally.
For me, it sounds like the same thing, dude.
You know what's funny is people have been talking to me about orgonite for a while, or argon pyramids, or however you pronounce it. And we called an Uber the other day. I had to take the car to the mechanic. The guy comes and picks us up, and he's got one in his passenger seat, or I mean, not the passenger seat, but the in between the seats. And so I'm talking to him, and he's, into Reiki and healing and all this stuff, and he gives us a crystal, and I'm like, oh wow, I've sent out thousands of these, and finally somebody's giving me a crystal. That's pretty awesome. But the dude was like totally in tune and totally all of that, and I asked him, why does he have the pyramid in the car, and he said, well, it clears out the negative energy because he drives around with so many different people. What do you guys think about that? About the Oregon clearing energies?
It totally works.
A couple of months, 6 months ago, again, I would have probably rolled my eyes, Chris, and thought, nah, new agey. But nah, I think there probably is something to it now.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I made some orgonite, right? All you got to do is take some copper and some different materials and put them in resin. And basically what it is, Chris, is that Wilhelm Reich research. It's basically the same thing. And when I made one, I put it on my windowsill, and like within 2 minutes, birds were outside there on the tree. Squirrel.
All right, we'll be back here in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Little Twin is not here today, so hello to everybody in the chat room. Raw is in the house too. What's up, Raw? Castaldo. We need to get you on to talk about crystals and things like that. I think maybe the bumper music's over. Let's see. Nope. I gotta avoid copyrights on my own songs.
Very special guest right here on KBS tonight, and we are going beyond the veil. I've got Jimmy Jeans here with me as well. Before the break, we were talking again. We were mentioning Psychotronics, which we had covered last week. And the reason we brought it up was because listening to Chris, it would appear that has a lot of the scientific terms for what Chris and Sheree and so many other people are talking about at this time in regards to resetting the matrix, the power of crystals, intention, all of these good things. Now, just as we approach the end of that half there, Chris mentioned the greys, and this is something that I really want to touch on tonight, and it's really topical that we do so now, because just over the weekend, and we should have been expecting it, folks, we spoke about it for so long, but there is news that China has produced its first genetically modified baby. Now, we could sit here and debate till the cows come home the advantages and the disadvantages of this. But this leads me to something that Chris holds very dear and close to his heart, and something that I think it's fair to say quite angers him. Because this is nothing new, the altering and the modification of our genetic code. And in fact, it's something that has been done before, time and time again. And in particular, Chris, one intervention or one editing of our genome arguably has taken place at the hands of these greys. Now, I'd love for you to talk about what your knowledge of the greys are and how they've basically manipulated us.
Well, what we downloaded from the stones in Egypt was a story of the greys' involvement going all the way back then. And the gods, for lack of a better term, brought in nuclear weapons through the stargates in Abydos, and there was a huge war that took place and all of this. And it was funny because, for instance, we went to Abydos, and I didn't do any research on Abydos, but as soon as I touched the stones, I saw red, like blood, and then I saw Set coming out of there. And then I found out while we were there on the site that it was named after Seti, and Seti was was one of the pharaohs that was named after Set, and all the Set energy that we were picking up on and all of that. But I guess I can start from modern times, which is when I entered the Matrix and I was about 3 or 4 years old. I used to tell my parents that little people were coming into my room at night. So much so that they took me to a psychologist to try to take care of this issue. But the Greys have been a recurring theme in my life. And when I was about 23 years old, I had an encounter with what I call tall whites. And I talked to Stanton Friedman about it. I talked to so many different ufologists on the show. And I used to refer to it as a dream just because I didn't want to be one of those people like, oh, I'm a contactee and stuff like that. And I was still trying to make sense of the experience. And there was a point where I was just accepting the experiences for what they were and didn't really question them too much and just thought, oh, well, I guess this is the way things are. And then I realized that my own sovereignty as a spirit, my own sovereignty as a creator being, and how atrocious it is that these things shapeshift into different forms to fool the observer as to what they're looking at. They put you in a state of confusion to where you can't think, you can't move, you can't question, you can't talk. It's a very, very confused state. And I remembered this in full detail in my 20s when I had the encounters with what I call the tall whites. So Sheree has also had similar experiences her entire life. As a matter of fact, her grandparents worked for Lockheed Martin. Her grandmother was the secretary to the president of Lockheed Martin. It was called Marietta something back then. It wasn't Lockheed. But so Sheree has had constant what I call visitations. And it was pretty amazing because there were a couple of them here in this house here that we're in that we remember. I'm laying on the couch and I see these three. Well, first of all, Sheree comes walking downstairs and I look at her and she walks towards the door and all of a sudden these three little grays come in the house. And I look at her and I say, why are they wearing Halloween costumes? It's too early for Halloween. Boom, I was out. And the next morning, Sheree comes downstairs and she says, hey, I think I had a weird dream last night. I think the Greys came or something. I said, why? What happened? And she said, I don't know. The three Greys came in the back door. You said something about Halloween costumes, and that's all that I remember. And I'm like, well, that's pretty coincidental because I remember that too. So I'm sleeping downstairs again, and I walk upstairs, and I see this little beady gray that's about 2 feet tall, maybe 2.5 feet tall, and it's standing in the foyer, and it has long hair like Sheree. And I'm looking at this thing and saying, you look like Sheree, but you're not Sheree. What are you? And then it waves its hand up in the air and boom, I find myself back on the couch again. So I tell Sheree about this experience and she said, well, I had an interesting experience a few months ago that I never told you about. She said, I dreamt that I was on a ship. I was taken on a ship and there was this baby that I was taken to, and they wanted me to play with this baby, and they kept saying, she's of you, she's of you, she's of you. Not she's yours, but she's of you. And when Sheree shared these experiences with other ufologists, they said that's exactly how they communicate in a hybrid type of scenario is they'll say this is of you, not this is yours, but this is of you. So the language was very coincidental in and of itself. So I don't know what to make of these experiences, but I can go back to my ayahuasca experiences. And from day one, there has always been grays in these experiences. They've just observed the experiences. I never interacted with them, never talked to them, but they were always there. There was one experience where I was laying on the couch really deep in meditation, or ayahuasca experience, in kind of the meditative state, and I opened my eyes, and most of these ayahuasca visions occur within the mind's eye, but every once in a while, the experience gets so deep that the dimensions start to shift and things start to appear within the room with you. So I'm sitting there and this Native American drumming comes on the stereo. It's boom, 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 boom. And the light starts flashing and I see this gray appear and walk in front of me. And after seeing the gray so many times, I said, you know what, I've got to talk to these things. I've got to see what it is exactly they are there for. And so I tried to communicate with them. But as I was communicating with them, or trying to anyways, the ISIS energy that I had been interacting with stepped in and said, no, don't talk to these things. They vibrate at the frequency of demons. They have nothing good to offer, and they're not supposed to be, I mean, I'm extrapolating a little bit on the message here, but they're not supposed to be doing what they're doing, and they're crossing over into different dimensions. When I was at the Temple of Isis, I realized that the Greys actually have been using consciousness to shift up in dimensions. So they've been able to piggyback on these different consciousness that are moving up and down through meditation, through ayahuasca, through all of this stuff. And there's this huge new age push to raise consciousness in an unnatural manner, or in a manner to where it's controllable. So I'll give you an example, and we confirm this in CIA documents, and I can get into that here in a moment. But the Kundalini, I never really resonated with the chakra system. I never resonated with the new age mumbo jumbo that I hear about, like Kundalini meditation and transcendental meditation and all of this, because my go-to is ayahuasca. And ayahuasca, I know I'm working one-on-one with the plants. There's no outside influence. There's nothing that. It is just only what's inside of myself. Nobody's leading the experiences. I'm not going to a shaman who's giving me his experience. I'm not doing a group meditation that's led by somebody else. It's me and the plants one-on-one. But in this particular experience, the Greys have been able to hop onto the consciousness through methods like Kundalini, that it doesn't complete the loop. The New Age teaches you how to do Kundalini meditation halfway, but they don't tell you how to complete the loop. And it's so important to complete that loop, because without it, you're opening up those energies, projecting them outwards, and it can actually cause spinal damage. Now, I didn't know all of this. I just instinctively knew to stay away from Kundalini meditation, just because it seemed pedestrian to me. But we came across these CIA documents that were released a couple of months ago. A listener sent them to us, and I can drop the link in the chat room. And it talks about how the Kundalini has to be completed in the loop, how it can cause spinal damage when not completed, how all these different states are different states that they've labeled. You have the theta wave state, which is the state that you're in when you're watching TV. It's a very hypnotic kind of state. But then they mention these other states, states 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, etc. And essentially what the New Age community has been doing, and I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose, they're very misinformed, is they've been training people on how to shut down the left part of the brain and let the right part of the brain operate by itself. This is very dangerous because, according to these CIA documents, what happens is when you get a vision, an intuition, something from the ayahuasca experience, something through meditation, it manifests within the right brain, and then it goes through the left brain processor. The left brain processor is the logical processor. So now you're trying to make sense of all of these visions and experiences. That's what I call discernment. It's very important to discern these energies, because you get Greys walking into your sphere, and there's a lot of people out there who will just cling on to whatever, no pun intended, cling on, will cling on to whatever extraterrestrial happens to walk into their sphere. And I can't help but think of a case back in 2003, Nancy Leader, who she had a website called Zeta Talk. She was always on Coast to Coast, and she claimed to be a contactee with the Zetas, which are the Greys. And she claimed they came from Zeta Reticuli and so on and so forth. And they had told her that Nibiru was coming through. And she was warning people to sell everything that they had, to get ready for Nibiru to come through, all this stuff. And even so far as to euthanize her own puppy. She had a little puppy. It was less than a year old, and she euthanized it. And who knows how many other people did that as well, because this supposed contactee, and you know, she very well could have been in contact with the Greys, and the Greys were giving her bad information. Or maybe the Greys were trying to create a particular outcome, because again, back to these CIA documents, it talks about patterning. It talks about how consciousness can be not only do it intentionally, but can be manipulated into creating these different types of holograms within the consciousness that then project upwards into space. When you project this thought hologram into space, then it can become a reality and come back down here and start to manifest itself here in this realm. This is what we call mind manifestation and intent manifestation, and there's another word that just eludes me right now. But speaking things into existence, speaking your intent into existence. But they, the controllers and the CIA, they know this. And so they've been urging people to put themselves in these states so the global consciousness, the collective consciousness can start manifesting reality more and more. And in these documents, it also talks about how these CIA agents are trained in these methods as well. Why would they need to train in these kind of methods? I mean, for psychic spying and things like that, but also to be aware of how these methods work, to not succumb to these kind of methods, and to be able to utilize these methods on other people and through mass media and mass scales and things like that. Now, you go back to our truther days, and we were talking about the exact same thing. Now we're talking about it with an enlivened consciousness, about how the mass consciousness actually creates and manifests reality around us. So I wonder if these grays were really communicating with this person and several other people at the time in order to try to bring out this catastrophic Nibiru type event by manipulating the collective consciousness. Well,
myself and Jimmy, we sometimes say that with the stories that we feel compelled to cover. There might not be a lot of substance to them, but it's almost as if they get enough people talking about, say, for example, an ice age coming, Chris. I mentioned that at the start of the show. There might be no ice age on the horizon, but if enough people start thinking about that and unintentionally generating that scenario, then by golly, that could be the outcome.
Yeah. It very well could. I mean, it makes me wonder, these situations in Syria, for example, did those really happen, or are they putting it out there in order to make those things happen? And is the news reporting on what's happening, or is what's happening being manifested because of the news? And now the way that they can put it out there on everybody's smartphone, on everybody's computer, on everybody's device, everybody's glued into these little matrices, these little matrix computers. But anyways, we have the repetition of this story over and over and over again. We have the repetition with the Palladians. We have the repetition now with the Arcturians. It seems like every time one of these stories gets exposed for the BS that it is, then it's the same story repeated. It just changes characters. So it went from the Zetas to the Palladians, and it went from the Palladians to the Arcturians, and it's just a repeating cycle over and over and over again. Those of us who have been in this long enough, we understand that this is a repeating cycle. But what happens is you get all of these new people, and we were guilty of it too. Nobody's immune to it, because this is something you learn from experience. We fell for the Palladian stuff too. We fell for the gray stuff too, way back then in 2009, 2010. We used to have the ambassador of the Galactic Federation of Light on the show regularly, and he drew a huge audience, so that made it even better. But
an ambassador on the show, Chris.
Oh, I know. Tell me, do you really want to release the dragon? No, unleash what? I forget how it goes. Unleash the dragon. Yeah. But no, I mean, we all fall for it because we're inexperienced and we learn through our experiences. And then it's funny because the most experienced ones always catch the crap for speaking from their experience, because it's a bunch of people who have gone through the cycles the first time. I learned with Nibiru. Nibiru promised to come in 2003. It stood us up. It promised to come in 2006. It stood us up. It promised to come in 2010, 2011, 2012. And it stood us up. And people were talking about how it's going to come through in 2017. And I'm like, no. Look, this is like a bad date here, okay? You stand me up once, I'll give you another chance, but not twice.
Yeah, we had Comet Elenin as well, and all we've got to show for that is a T-shirt, right?
Right.
We lived through that, yeah. I remember all those days. And, it's funny you say this, because recent times we've had the whole QAnon phenomenon unfolding. And I'm big enough to admit that if I was just coming into the conspirasphere, that would have been like manna from heaven for me. It would have seemed like all of our problems were going to be solved. But like you say, experience, it counts for a hell of a lot in this game. And you start to see through all of these scams. And like you say, it's cyclical.
It is. Because they know the human consciousness will fall for things. And so they do. Now, if there are any benevolent ETs out there, then it's a disservice to them. It's a disservice to people that are really, trying to make a better world and manifest a better reality here. But I find nothing but deceit and deception within all of these different beings, including the ones that I've encountered in the ayahuasca realm. And it took me a while to really reconcile this within myself, because I was contacting all these different beings, all these different entities, aliens, and, all of that. But I still had the discernment in my mind. And the biggest test for any kind of entity I encountered is, what are they doing? Are they playing to my ego? Are they trying to make me feel like a savior, messiah type of thing by the information that they're giving me, or are they giving me information that unlocks different parts of myself? And I remember I was speaking to Isis for a couple of months, and then she disappeared. And I thought to myself, why is she gone? What did I do? What did I do wrong? And I kept second guessing myself, but then as the journey progressed, I realized, no, everything's inside of me, so on and so forth. So when I went to her temple and actually saw her in her true form, what she really is, all that, I realized, no, she didn't leave because I did anything wrong. She left because I did everything right, because I was grabbing the power from myself. I was becoming the creator being. I was remembering who I was, and I was realizing that I don't need all these crutches and extraterrestrials and all these things. These are just crutches because we don't want to harness our own power within us. So I hope I'm not diverting too much off the topic, but the Greys have been a huge problem going all the way back to ancient Egypt, and probably even before that. They've always been in the background trying to manipulate things. And they're supposed to be in the background. They're supposed to be playing a role. They're kind of like the workers that just fix things in the background. But they've been infected with a virus because they are part of the system. And this virus has allowed them to shapeshift. This virus has allowed them to get into dimensions where they're not supposed to be in. And, there's some very diehard Christian people. I'm not going to mention their name. And I think you know who I'm talking about. But I agree with them that the dimensions have been breached and that there are entities that are coming into this dimension that are not supposed to be in this dimension. There is some truth to everything. It's just the perspective has been so twisted, but we've got to put these things back in their place, and we can't allow them to keep on breaching the dimension. But if you look at radiation and things like that, Sheree and I have been talking about this, the way they're radiating the food, radiating the water, the hybrid programs, I think what's happened is they figured out how to shift into this dimension. They've created hybrids, so they're more connected with the avatars that are here, trying to merge into the avatars, but ultimately also creating an environment where they can function better in this dimension. This dimension is like the center point of the entire matrix. Everything up and down after that is just like background stuff. It's administrative access. It's like looking at the code instead of actually looking at the game that's being played. So you're playing a video game, you want to go, access these higher levels, and it's like, okay, well, all you're going to see is a bunch of code. It's no fun there. This is where the game was constructed. This is where the game is played. But they want to take over the game, and they want to be here in this game messing with all the players instead of being in the background doing their work the way they're supposed to.
Now, it's interesting you talking about the radiating of the food and things, because I've certainly covered this on my show in the past, and it's the correlation between the sightings of UFOs, and for this conversation, we'll say the Greys, and whenever there's some kind of nuclear test, nuclear facilities, nuclear weapons, and it's commonly it's a commonly held maybe misbelief that these aliens are actually here to look after us, to make sure that we don't kind of get out of hand and we don't get these weapons and we destroy ourselves. But could it be that they're actually attracted to the radiation then, Chris? That's what's pulling them here?
I have a theory that the nuclear blast, the atomic bomb, was the first portal that was opened that allowed these things full access into this dimension. Some people will say that they observed this from millions of light years away in Zeta Reticuli, and they came in their spaceships flying over here faster than the speed of light and all of this. But to me, I think that nuclear blast was the first thing that opened the dimensions, or weakened the gates. The other one that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there's more, was 9/11. Huge ritual to further open up these portals and allow these things even bigger access. I mean, look at the progression here. First, we have the atomic blast. Then we have the fear programming over and over and over again. And right around the time of the atomic blast, we also had Hollywood making all of these Martian movies. And it seemed like there was a movie coming out every week about it came from outer space. It came from Mars. It came from the moon. It came from Uranus. It came from all these different places. And then we started getting into the fear programming, and then we got into the actual ritual sacrifices. And now here we are living in a radiated environment in a fear frequency where everybody's connected through this technology that's opening up these portals more and more and more. It seems like they played step 1, step 2, step 3, and then all 3 steps all at the same time right now.
You could even tie in the geoengineering, and I call it the terraforming of the planet, Chris. I've often threw out there and speculated that it's almost as if they're getting it ready for an entirely new race. Now, I've usually looked at the whole transhumanist angle and Human 2.0, but for listening to you tonight, it's almost as if perhaps they're preparing this environment for that merging of the dimensions when they are literally going to coexist here.
That's what I felt as well. And it's not good to merge the dimensions. It's like merging things in your computer system. So now your Skype files have access to your Windows files, and somebody sends you a virus through Skype Messenger. And now because that virus exists within your Skype downloads folder, it now has access to your Windows files. And now it can manipulate your entire system because it has access that it's not supposed to have. Everything was firewalled and quarantined for a particular reason. It's not all supposed to merge together. It's supposed to go back to a point of balance.
Is this why we're seeing glitches then, i.e. Mandela effects and things like that?
I think so. I think what's happening is that there's so much going on right now, and a merger of the dimensions, that the system has been running hot. And it's just like if your computer's running too hot, your graphics card starts to fail. It starts to render the things on your screen a little bit funky. Photoshop may not work right. And so we're seeing these glitches in the matrix system itself, and things are being rewritten. Databases are corrupted now. So Berenstain turns into Berenstain when the computer tries to make the correction. And I think with the whole idea of organic consciousness and NPCs, and for people that aren't up to speed on this, the way I view reality is like a World of Warcraft game. So you have real players sitting at a keyboard, then you have what I call non-player characters that are operating within the game itself, and we're meant to be part of the game to make the game fun and to make the game move forward. But you go back to ancient writings, and you have Thoth talking about the children of men, children of light. You have the Bible making a distinction between men and sons of men. You have Blavatsky talking about those with the divine spark and those without the divine spark. I mean, this information is repeated over and over and over again. The difference is now we have technological terms to put them in. So these I completely forgot where I was going with that. Organic consciousness and non-player characters. Anyways, let me let you jump in, and the thought may come back to mind.
Yeah, we're almost going to the break anyway, but for people out there, there's a computer game right now, Red Dead Redemption 2, and this will show you exactly where the NPC term came from. And then think about your real life. Any NPCs hanging around you? I bet there are. We'll be back after the break, folks.
That's the one that always flags me. I'll make it a point to get Kev some good bumper music that's royalty free. I told him I'd do that a couple months ago, and I haven't. I dropped the ball on it. I dropped the ball on everything. All right.
I was really interested when you started saying there about the nuke and the Stargate in Egypt, Chris. That stuff is fascinating.
Badass. My jaw was on the ground, man, when I was seeing all this, and I'm like, no. I felt like Luke Skywalker in the second Star Wars going, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. I was crying on live stream when I was talking about all this.
They found areas where literally only a nuclear blast could have caused, the sand to turn to glass and stuff like this. So I'm absolutely on page with this, man. This has been brilliant tonight, dude. Honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so here's what happened, and maybe we can get into this if you want, but this is really dark here. So we were bringing these weapons through the Stargate, and I don't know where these weapons were coming from, but I suspect they were coming from modern times. Abydos is where you have the pictures of like the Black Hawk helicopters and missiles and things like that. So I think it's not really Stargate, but it's more like a time gate where you can go from here to there. So we gave these weapons to Seti, and Seti was fighting the Greys. But then what happened afterwards is Seti decided that he wanted to use these weapons against his enemies, and we're like, no, 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 no. These weapons are not meant for destruction. These weapons are meant for fighting the Greys, and that's it. But he just went bloodthirsty. So the gods left, closed up the stargates, and that's it. So what they started doing at Abydos is they started doing these blood rituals, and I suspect that the gates were open based on some kind of sound. And I think the torture along with the blood was trying to emulate that sound to reopen the gates. And we walked into this one room in Abydos, and we felt the pizza type energy just radiating in that room. And I asked the Egyptologist, I said, hey, is there any blood sacrifices here? He said, no, 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 no. I said, okay. And so when we got back, we went to the internet, and sure enough, there's other people saying that in Abydos, there were blood, like horrific blood ritual sacrifices, and they were trying to power those gates open.
Well, Chris, I'd love for you to cover that when we come back, if you want. But if you want to,
I'll let you lead.
Yeah. Jimmy, I told you it would be good, man.
Oh man, dude, this is great. Hey, hey, Chris, are you still seeing? Do you still see the TFR chat?
I don't have it open now.
Yeah, if you go after the show, go in there. I dropped that thing about that Hindu nuclear weapon thing.
It's in the Skype chat, not the TFR chat.
Yeah, Skype chat. Sorry.
Yeah.
The Brahmanda Astra, the supernatural nuclear weapon from Hindu.
It doesn't surprise me, man. It doesn't surprise me. Somebody told me on the last show that they actually had a version of ayahuasca, a Hindu version of ayahuasca. Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me, you know. Here we go. We go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back in a moment. Abydos was a creepy place.
For all of you listeners out there, don't panic. We're in the last segment now, and the information just continues to flow because that's how we roll on TFR. We've got Phoenix coming up after the break, and then Joe Joseph on the Freedom Link, so please don't go anywhere. And tonight it's an absolute honour to have our boss in the house. It's Chris Geo here from Beyond the Veil. We've been talking about AyaLife, and remember, check out AyaLife at ayalife.com and use coupon code KBS at the checkout to get $10 off this wonder potion that Chris and Sheree have poured so much time, energy, and love into. And with that out of the way, we also got into the Greys, and that's really formed the major part of the conversation tonight. We mentioned the 13th density, but I want to stick on this with the Greys. And there was something that Chris mentioned there during the last segment. So many highlights, you know, probably some people might even have missed it. But you were talking about ancient times, Chris, and the transfer of nuclear weapons through stargates. Now, I'm very, very of the belief, I've got nothing really to back it up per se, but stargates for me, very, very real, especially in antiquity. And with what you were telling us during the break, I'd love for you to share that with the audience.
Well, I wish I would have had I wish I would have had the foresight to pull up some pictures, because we've got some awesome footage from inside of Abydos. But we noticed that going throughout the temples, and it was repeated throughout many different areas, we would find what I guess Chris Everard, he termed them false doors. I'm going to see if I can find a picture of the false doors in Egypt. Okay, yeah, here I've got a couple of pictures here that we can put up on the screen here. So we found these false doors all over the place, and I realized these false doors are actually replicants of what look like Stargate technology. And in Abydos is 2.5 hours into the desert. It is it's nasty going out there. As a matter of fact, it's dangerous. You have to have police escort. They do a convoy where a police officer, a police convoy will take you about 10 miles and then meet up with another convoy and then meet up with another convoy. And it's some kind of agreement that they have with the U.S. government to do this for Americans, because it's very dangerous to go out there to the desert by yourself. And so I knew instinctively when we were getting out there, the smell was horrible. It smelled like death going into the desert. And I knew we were going to confront Set. I didn't know what else was going to lay there. But as we were walking through Abydos, first of all, you walk in and you're hit with this darkness. It's one of the only dark temples that's there. Everything else is pretty well lit up, but Abydos is still dark. So this is where you find all of the hieroglyphs of helicopters, submarines, different type of weapons that look like modern day weapons that Egyptologists are looking at and saying, hey, this is evidence of ancient aliens. Ufologists are looking at it with the same way. Up on the screen, I have this picture here, and you can clearly see what looks like a spaceship right here. You can see a Black Hawk helicopter here. So as we started to touch the stones and download information, I started to realize that there were these false doors in Abydos, and they were modeled after actual stargates that existed there. And what they were doing is the gods, for lack of a better term, were bringing in technology from these gates. And the people there, once the gods left, I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but once the gods left, they essentially took the stones and tried to carve them out to make them look like the stargates. So imagine if a caveman saw a car and he just chiseled one out of stone. It's not going to work because there's no engine, there's nothing that makes it actually work. But he's just creating the appearance of it. So the gods were bringing in these weapons because they were dealing with Greys. And they gave them to Seti to fight the Greys. They needed to install a warlord at this particular time because the Greys were about to take over. And that's exactly what Seti was. But afterwards, or maybe even sometime during, Seti got really bloodthirsty, and he started using these weapons in a way that they weren't intended. They were intended only to fight the Greys with, but he was using them to fight his enemies and to kill other people and to take out whole cities and things like that. So the gods packed up and left, and they said, "That's it, we're leaving." And they created these false doors within Abydos. I thought I had a picture of it here, but I don't. But anyways, they created the false doors at Abydos, and they were trying to open up the portals, but they didn't have the technology to do it. So they resorted to blood sacrifices. There is one particular room where you walk into and you feel the energy just hit you all over. And I was looking at Sheree and saying something really horrible happened here. This is pizza related stuff. This is horrible, horrible stuff. Did the gods and goddesses who we revere, were they involved in all of this? Is there a duality to these? Is it, have we been following the wrong path here? I mean, it just completely threw my consciousness just completely for a loop, and I needed a lot of time to digest this. But I asked the Egyptologist that was there, hey, is there any blood sacrifices that took place here? And he said, no. But the Egyptologist was a follower of Set on top of that. He told me that as we were talking. And so he said, you know why the temple seems dark? He says, it's because you're walking in backwards. He says, you're supposed to walk in from the other side. When you walk in from the other side, it's a whole nother feeling. And I said, no. This is a dark temple here. Anyways, that's just a little bit of a side story. So when they were trying to make these work, they were torturing people, and they were torturing people in the most horrendous ways. And I remember being there in one of my past lives, and I remember watching the torture, and I remember how disgusted I was with everything that was going on. And I met somebody who also has memories of being there as well. And she said, look, don't worry. It was only happening out of necessity, and it was only happening to the people that deserved it. And I thought to myself, well, that's not any kind of consolation to me whatsoever, just the fact that it was happening. But it seems to be repeating now in modern times, these same type of rituals. You know, we hear about this pizza stuff, and this is not, I don't want to tag the YouTube video with this word, but I'll just say it anyways. It's not pedophilia. A lot of people talk about and say that it's pedophilia. This is something way deeper, way sicker than that. This is torturing innocence and harvesting the energy of children for the purpose of pulling their energy into them, opening up portals, tearing down dimensions, and things like that. And the sexual part of the rituals are to heighten the energy. It's not like these people are pedophiles. They're pedophiles times 1,000. It's pedicide. It's vampirism. It's vampirism on these children.
It's the life force, I think they're after more than anything, aren't they? They call it the adrenalized blood. And I don't want to get too into this for YouTube either, because we know what they feel about this. But I'm with you on this. This goes far darker than what most people really take it to.
Yeah.
Pederasty.
Yeah. Jimmy?
I was just saying the word that comes to mind for me is pederasty, not pedophilia. It's not the love of children. It's the abuse of children and the sucking of their energy, just like Chris is saying.
Yeah. It's far worse.
We've got the Mayan civilization as well that were very big on blood sacrifices. Now, I mean, I don't know your knowledge on their kind of setup, but do you think they were trying to do similar then to recall their gods over there?
I think so. And the fact that you have the same kind of temple structures, you have the same kind of priesthoods that developed around these parts. The priests used to wear, I may have this backwards, but in Egypt, I think they wore the falcon over their head. And in South America, they wore the eagle. Or it may not be the exact birds, but they both had birds that looked very, very similar. You go and look at the different types of hieroglyphs and the way everything is laid out, and you find similarities between the two that are much more than just two civilizations developing independently of one another. But there could very well be some benevolent entities that that existed here, especially in the Aztec culture. I speculate, and this is pure speculation, but hear me out on this. Here's my thought pattern on this. You see how the Aztecs used to modify themselves to make themselves look more, the only way I can describe is reptilian. They have their reptilian gods on their monuments. They have the big noses, the big ears, sometimes elongated necks, things like that. And a lot of face painting and face tattooing. And you still see this in modern day culture where the MS-13, I think is what they're called, that gang, you see them with the tattoos all over their faces and they look very reptilian. And so I think what was happening is you had some kind of reptilian entity that was here that may have been not only demanding these sacrifices, but actually eating the sacrifices after the fact. And the sacrifices just continued even after this thing was gone. But yeah, I just don't understand. My third dimensional brain cannot reconcile why the hell would anybody do a human sacrifice, especially on a cultural level. Like, it makes absolutely no sense to me. There have to be some higher or deeper, that's a better word, some deeper and much more malevolent and nefarious energies at work here.
There's always more nefarious energies at work, Chris, and I'm wondering, you tied it to the modern day as well, and the fact that they're almost getting back to these similar practices. Would that be because of the fact they're trying to bring these dimensions closer together? They're trying to attract these entities back here.
I think it goes right back to it. Yeah, it's harvesting energy to try to open up the portals. And why do they want to open up the portals? I don't know, but I know that the ones that were coming in Egypt, I don't want to call them benevolent because they weren't benevolent and they weren't malevolent. They just were. And they were the ones bringing in the weapons to try to take care of the gray problem, to kind of try to rebalance things. They're gone. And in Egypt, they were trying to open the gates to bring them back, or at least go to that dimension and bring back more weapons. It may not have been that they were calling to try to bring these gods back, but rather they were trying to open up the gates themselves so they can go get more weapons themselves. But something has been seeping into this matrix, and it's virus infected, and I think with modern technology now it's turned to CERN and things like that. I haven't looked into CERN too much, and I know that they supposedly did some kind of ritual outside, and it just seemed like trolling, in my opinion. Like they were just trolling the internet.
a lot of that stuff, you could put that down to clever marketing. No such thing as bad publicity. And they know exactly what people like me and others say about them online. However, that being said, the scientists themselves, the language they use, it's not dissimilar to what we're talking about tonight, because they talk about opening portals to other dimensions. And it's quite interesting because CERN, if you look at the history, I mean, it really started off in the nuclear age, and they were doing the simulation of nuclear tests, how big the yield of certain, or how big the blast of certain yields would be. And here we are again, back at the nuclear way of opening portals, Chris. It looks like CERN, since their inception through science, have been working on various forms of projects that all have a similar goal. They all open dimensional portals. And that's not me just kind of speculating. That's from their own language that they say that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I saw in the sky during the eclipse in August of, I want to say 2016, was maybe 2017. I don't know. Time's been moving very strange for me lately. Was a big, giant octopus in the sky that I've seen before. I just didn't understand. Well, it wasn't until after the fact that I started talking about this that somebody pointed out and said, hey, have you actually looked at the pictures of CERN? It looks like the bottom of an octopus.
Certainly got the legs for it, hasn't it?
It does. It does.
Yep.
Like the octopus is coming down and swallowing you up. So there's definitely something much bigger here going on than we have, unfortunately, the language to talk about. That we have the understanding to talk about. Our consciousness is still unlocking. See, we have everything that we need inside of us. We are complete. We are creator beings, but it's locked. It's like several doors inside of us that are locked, and we unlock these, and that's how it's not expanding consciousness. It's unlocking consciousness, because our consciousness is already encompassing everything, but there's parts of it that are locked. But the more that we unlock, the more that we can start to understand what's going on in the higher realms. But it all starts at the very beginning. It all starts within us, first and foremost. We have to heal ourselves. We have to take care of our own little sphere. We have to create the shields around ourselves. And then after that, then we can help others unlock parts of their own consciousness. But if we're broken, if we're messed up, if we can't even figure out how to navigate the third dimension, we can't help people figure out how to navigate the fifth dimension. So the work all falls right back on our own shoulders, that we have to do the repair on ourselves first before we can repair anything else. And once we do that, though, we realize that there's a separation between all of these energies that are surrounding us and ourselves. And then we navigate through here as if we have firewalls around us, and we're well fortified to be able to deal with these negative energies. And then we find out that our own personal journey starts to change, and the suffering and the anguish and, the things, the ups and the downs, they become so much easier to deal with because we have a full understanding of who we are. We have a full understanding of what our reality is. So it's nice to understand what's going on in the other realms. But if you don't understand what's going on within yourself, first and foremost, and who you are, what's going on in the other realms has, first of all, no relevance. And the only relevance that it does have is it's going to create a compression on you and essentially just eat you up and destroy you. So that's what I would urge the audience out there. Balance all of this stuff out that we're talking about with the inner work and the shadow work that you have to do within yourself, because the two have to go together. If one is done without the other, you're just getting half the picture. And there's no reason why an elevated, enlightened consciousness can only get the half the picture. And the only reason that can be is because you're not elevated and you're not enlightened unless you are working on both at the same time.
Very, very wise words. And if I just pull you back quickly to the technology, Chris, I mean, I talk about CERN, but hand in hand with that is D-Wave. And I think you're going to find this really, really important, because it's something that myself and so many others we've been wrestling with. We can't quite put our fingers on what it is that Geordie Rose is talking about. And Geordie Rose, he's more the marketing man, the DARPA man behind D-Wave. And I get when he says a lot of things, like some of the kind of rituals that we've seen at CERN, probably a lot of it may be tongue-in-cheek. However, what do you make of the fact that he talks about the qubit, the quantum bit, we have ones and zeros in classical computing, but this quantum bit's a 1 and a 0, and it literally is in this dimension, and it is in multiple other dimensions at the same time, right? So he says what we do is we send it out to these other dimensions. It comes back and it answers all of the questions that we asked it. And then there's a 10% excess in extra resources that come back from the other side. And what he does is he just continues on with his talk then. He doesn't go on to explain what these 10% extra resources are. Now, we've been talking about how there's almost an invasion going on into our reality, our dimension, Chris. Speculation on my part, and I know I'm throwing this at you, but could this be the stuff that we're talking about? Could he be bringing back stuff from other dimensions then?
It's funny. He uses the word qubit, and I just made this connection as you were talking, but on the screen right here, I have Metatron's cube. And Metatron's cube is the foundation of life itself. It's the seed, the seed of life that turns into the tree of life, into the fruit of life, into all of that. It's the very basic foundation, building block of the matrix itself, where everything originates from. And the fact that you have a D-Wave guy talking about qubits and cubes and stuff like that, I don't know too much about the information that you're talking about, but I do want to say this, Kev, and I will look into it. When I first saw this D-Wave computer, I thought to myself, as above, so below. I thought to myself, that is the machine that we are inside of right now. It was just replicated on this realm because as above, so below. In order to create a reality that's, in order to create a simulated reality that is believable to the player or to the observer, then you put in real information that's developed within the real world and you put it into the simulation to give the illusion that the simulation is that much more real. And I feel like this right here is at least maybe the infancy of the next matrix that we're going to find ourselves in. What do you think about that?
Well, he does say, and again, this is his words. People think I make this up, but it's not. And you can see this online. He says it's honestly like standing next to an altar to an alien god. You can hear the heartbeat within it. Now, he's referring to the refrigeration system, Chris. But there's something about the way that he says this, that there's more to it than just him throwing it out there for effect. And then there's another person from D-Wave called Dr. Suzanne Gildert. And she's been with Geordie all the way from day one. And they're making these synthetic robots that are indistinguishable from humans. And she says at this point, and I'm quoting her directly, it's a bit more like black magic than science at this point. So whatever they're tapping into, dude, I mean, this is scientists saying that. It's not me speculating. This is from their mouths. So I think we're on to something big time here.
I think so too, and it gets insane, Kev. I mean, the deeper we get into this, the realer it gets, but at the same time, the more unbelievable that it gets. And I'm not talking about unbelievable to a third-person observer. I'm talking about unbelievable even to myself, to us as we start to contemplate these different ideas and philosophies and...
Well, Chris, a lot of people in Silicon Valley, they microdose with LSD. Mm-hmm. Now, my question to you would be, could they be gaining information like you do when you go on your ayahuasca trips to other dimensions? And I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, have they been given the information to build a machine that they maybe think is going to be our way out of the matrix, but in reality, it's taking us further into it?
I think so. I think that we all have this information embedded within us, and it's a matter of unlocking it. So we all have the schematics for teleportation devices and quantum computing and all of that. I had this one interesting ayahuasca experience where I saw this entity. It was a pyramid and it had little arms and legs, and it was standing on top of a Mayan pyramid, and it had all this Egyptian hieroglyphs circling around it. And this thing was an entity, no doubt about it, and it locked onto my pineal. And it was trying to give me information. Oh, it had an eye right in the middle. So it was a pyramid with an eye. It locked into the pineal trying to give me information. And the music kept interfering with it, and it was telling me I can't talk to you unless you turn off the music, and I was in such a deep state that I don't know how I managed to get up and actually turn the music off. But I mean, I think I hit the stop button and then just laid on the floor right there, and this thing locked onto my pineal and started giving me all this information for it. I can't describe it, but it's like flipping through. The best way to describe it is like flipping through a book, and you can see the title chapters, but you can't see the actual text itself. And it was like, here's information for a time machine. Here's information for free energy. Here's all this information. Take it. And I told it, you've got to slow down. I don't understand what you're giving me. And it said, no. You just take it. You'll know what to do with it later. Just take it. You'll know what to do with it later. I think what that was a part of myself unlocking. And we're drawing from all of this whenever we're creative. So we create a piece of art, and then all of a sudden we realize that piece of art is also created by other people, because we're actually pulling something out of our consciousness, something that we remember. When we saw this thing in the sky during the eclipse, this was August, and then in October, Stranger Things 2 comes out. Well, Stranger Things 2 is about this interdimensional giant octopus that's in the other realm, trying to merge the dimensions. Well, we were talking about this 2 months before Stranger Things came out. But it's not that Stranger Things copied us, because it takes at least a year to produce that whole series, if not 2 years. So this was well in production by the time we saw this in the ayahuasca realm. I'll take
it stranger for you. I'll take it stranger right before we leave the audience, because I know we're up against the clock. But I've dropped a picture in the Skype chat for you here, Chris. Now, I've dropped the original Geordie Rose video that I urge you to watch when you get a chance. But that second screenshot, if you look in the background, you'll see myself. Well, you'll see Anthony Patch. And that was a Freaky Friday show that we done. And Geordie Rose, the man behind D-Wave, he opened up his presentation to a crowd of prospective employees. He's trying to sell them on D-Wave by saying there's people on the internet that think we're going to be pulling demons and things like that through. He goes on to talk about Elon Musk as well. But this is where it gets interesting, Chris, because he says, forget that. It's not demons. These are just entities that have got absolutely none of our interests at heart. They don't care about us. And in fact, they're more akin to the H.P. Lovecraftian kind of ancient old ones. Now, when you look into H.P. Lovecraft, one of his major characters is the Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, yep.
And what's Cthulhu but a massive, monstrous octopus? So you see how it all connects, Chris. And this guy here and all of his buddies over at D-Wave, they all love tweeting about H.P. Lovecraft and the ancient old ones and Cthulhu. And, you know, for somebody who discounts what myself and Patch were saying about bringing demons through the portal, obviously he took time to listen to the show. I must thank him for that. Gave us a good plug at his presentation. But I think it shows that we're all onto something here, folks. You know, people will criticize us for talking the way we have done tonight, going up and down dimensions, opening portals. But bear in mind, the people at the cutting edge of science, they're not just looking at this, they're manipulating it. So, Chris, I have to thank you tonight, because you have dotted many I's for me, and I hope I've crossed a couple of T's for you. And I'm really looking forward to hooking up again in another couple of weeks or so, man. But once we can really batter out some more information, because this is great stuff. Thanks, man.
Likewise, brother. And I got to say congratulations on this. This is amazing.
Well, between that and Ben Gertzel, the guy behind Sophia the Robot, you know, he tweeted out our Mark of the Beast Sophia show. So we're attracting good listeners.
I like that big TFR logo in the background too.
Absolutely. This is brilliant, folks. You've been listening to Chris.
I'm going to mute it here for just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. They're brutal with the copyrights. Like I got hit with copyright on a song that I had a license for from the artist. This is going all the way back to 2009, and I did a dispute. And they were like, nope, screw you.
That's fucking funny too, man.
Yo.
It's funny, no. I mean, I'll tell you what, man. Next time, I think, you know, Chris hadn't looked over that Psychotronics shit, so he wasn't able to, like, bring it together. But I think by the time you guys do the next show, that might be a good triad, because, I mean, there's a whole bunch of shit in the Emerald Tablets that points to that energy.
I thought Geo knew that Geordie Rose was like a major Freaky Friday listener. He hangs out on Freaky Fridays, dude.
I
No,
think
you didn't know.
so. I think so.
He
It's
definitely pays attention.
well, that's incredible. But I mean, it just I need to watch this video because it goes to back up exactly what I've been saying, is that these entities that people are contacting are not benevolent entities. They don't want to raise our consciousness. They don't want to do anything like that. They're not malevolent either.
Have
But
you got 2 minutes, Chris?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll play this little bit for you just so you can see for yourself what he's talking about, right?
Okay, just a heads up, we're still streaming on YouTube,
Okay.
so just letting you know.
Well, this is all over YouTube, so there shouldn't be any problems with copyright or anything like that. I'll just find this bit here.
Ah, there's Jimmy. It's Jimmy, the J, the I, the M, the I. Did you play that song?
No, I didn't play it, but I'm going to play it
Okay.
on Thursday.
Here we go. I think this is it.
Are right on the verge of that transition now. So this guy, Rich Sutton, is one of the most famous people in the academic world of AI. And like many, when asked, when will this happen? He says,
Hang on, I'll just fast forward it a little.
smart, they might be really good at all sorts of different
This is
things,
it.
but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room in ways that we can't even comprehend. So this, of course, triggers a lot of alarm. One of the guys who talks about this is Elon, who says things like this, like, when you do this, beware. Because you think, just like the guy in the stories, that when you do this, you're going to put that little guy in a pentagram, and you're going to have your holy water out, and you're going to wave it at the thing, and by God, it's going to do exactly what you say and not one thing more, but it never works out that way. So this is an attitude that some are having, this emerging alarmism about the way this is going to go. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn-of-the-century weird fiction fans, but there's this guy named H.P. Lovecraft, who's a very famous American weird fiction author. And he espoused a view which is called cosmicism. And the essence of cosmicism is cosmic indifference. So what he was saying is basically, yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons, they're not evil, but they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. So this transition is really, really massively important for our entire species to navigate. And going back to that thing that Sam Harris was saying, nobody is paying attention. This thing is happening in the background while people bicker about politics and what's going to be in the healthcare plan in the US. And underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out.
And that's the guy creating the machine that's welcoming in these things, Chris.
Amazing, man. Amazing. It confirms to me that we're right on track, and that what they're doing over there is exactly what we feel that they're doing. And everybody has a piece of the puzzle. That's the thing. Everybody is right to a certain point, to a certain degree. Like, even the diehard Christians that talk about the CERN opening up portals for demons and things like that. They have a sliver of truth to them, and their concern is valid. The perspective is all wrong, though. But I agree with them. They have no good intentions, and they don't want anything good from us.
Yeah, that's why I like working with so many different people from so many different belief systems, because, like you say, we've all got similar stories. They're all pieces of the same puzzle. We might have different language, and we've been programmed to divide ourselves because we've got different beliefs. But at the end of the day, we're all saying the same thing, really.
Yeah, we are. And that's We've got to harness the power from ourselves. The only thing I would disagree with that guy on is he said, imagine it's like an ant that you don't care about an ant. To me, it's more like imagine if the ants were the ones that ruled the world, or that the ants were the ones that were the higher consciousness, but we're the ones that took over this world and started squashing all the ants. That's essentially what we're dealing with here, because we're the ones that created all this. We're the creator beings. Those higher dimensional, quote unquote, higher dimensional entities, they're of a higher dimension or even of a lower dimension, but they're background workers. They're not supposed to be in the front. It's like a computer program that's gone rogue on the programmer. We are the programmers. We are the ones that control all of this, not the other way around.
Yeah, it's just that we've forgotten all of that, and without realizing it, we've become like the ant.
Yep.
Well, I hope you dive down that quantum rabbit hole, Chris, because it really ties in so much with what you're talking about as well. And very keen to do another show in a couple of weeks, man, because this has been great. The last 2 shows have been great. Glad we didn't get banned tonight. That's always a plus point. But no, man, this is really, really important stuff. And like Jordy said there, all the other stuff, the politics, the false flags, it's all details, it's all minutia. It's where we're headed as a civilization is where we should all be looking right now. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It's interesting times, man. Thank you for having me on again. It was freaking awesome. And, I'm really hesitant to look into certain things because I prefer my journey to be one where I unlock information within the ayahuasca realm. However, going down the quantum line, I think it's a good place to go because it's going to start to confirm, in my opinion, a lot of the things that I've already experienced. So I'm definitely going to start looking into this. As soon as I get done with the other 100 things that I have on my plate, I'm going to start looking into this for sure.
Don't you worry. If anything really important comes along that ties in with what you've been telling me, I'll be sure to drop it over to you, man. Don't you worry about that.
Please do. I'll have to start tuning into the Kev Baker show more. So I can get all this information. I do whenever I can, for sure.
You're the one person on planet Earth that doesn't listen, Chris. I'm shocked.
That's true. What can I say?
I've had a blast tonight.
There was a dark energy on the station for a long time, and I was kind of averted to it. But after that dark energy left, I felt this life being breathed back into the station again. And I check out you, I check out Jimmy, I check out all the shows on TFR. I'm working in the background trying to make things better. I know you saw the changes in the back end. There's some changes that you haven't seen. There's an administrative panel now that Lucky can go in there and actually work on the server herself and all that.
Like, it's almost as if we were that abyss that you were talking about. It was like trying to swim through treacle just before you reached the dawn. That's what it was, man. So I'm with you all the way there.
Awesome. Do you guys have 3 minutes or do you have to take off?
No, I don't have to go. That was a fascinating show, man. Seriously, I was listening to you guys the whole time, and what you were saying, Chris, was sparking my brain, and I was making these correlations with all the stuff that I had put together over the last couple of weeks. And I think that there's actual scientific proof to what you're saying through this psychotronic shit. So I'll definitely send you some links in Skype, and so you can check that out, because I think it'll really I know it did for me, because it made the emerald tablets of Thoth make sense in a way.
Yeah, and I think if you dive into quantum mechanics, Chris, I think you're going to be sitting shaking your head, because it literally is the science of what you're talking about. I mean, you're talking about consciousness being, all the possibilities and probabilities that we come along and manifest it. I mean, that's classic quantum physics, man. You're going to love this, dude. It's a rabbit hole you need to come down.
Do you still have the map of consciousness you could throw over to Chris?
I do need to get you. I do.
Consciousness, Chris. There's a map.
I'll send that through. But guys, I need to shoot off right now. It's midnight here. I need to give my mum a quick phone, mummy's boy that I am. But Chris, this has been delightful, dude. And hopefully we can do this again sometime soon, because I love hanging with your audience as well, man. I learned so much from them.
Oh, they're awesome, man. I haven't paid enough attention to the chat, but they steer the show and they really just take things to a whole new level. I mean, they help connect so many dots. So, hey, we love you, Kev. Thank you. But drop me that drop us that photo if you don't mind, because I want to ask Jimmy about it.
Yeah, I'll drop the map of consciousness. I'll go and get it for you guys. Thank you.
Cool.
Catch you later.
Love you, bro. Hey, Jimmy, if you got some time, let's take a quick break and then we'll do a little bit of YouTube if that's good with you.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Let me just grab some coffee real quick. How long do you want to take a break? Like 3 minutes?
I got to do the same. I'm thinking, about 4 minutes.
Okay, sounds good, man.
Cool. All right.
Right on. Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will keep it going for you. Little Twin is out of commission today. But we'll keep it going a little bit longer because we got so much love in the chat room and so many awesome people that we can't disconnect from your energies. So we'll be right back.
The universe grows smaller every day, and the threat of aggression by any group, anywhere, can no longer be tolerated. There must be security for all, or no one is secure. For our policemen, we created a race of robots. Their function is to patrol the planets in spaceships like this one and preserve the peace. We have given them absolute power over us. At the first sign of violence, they act automatically against the aggressor. The penalty for provoking their action is too terrible to risk.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix.
Listen and understand. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
I came here to give you these facts. This Earth of yours will be reduced to a burned-out cinder.
We don't know who struck first, us or them. But we know that it was us that scorched the sky.
Your choice is simple. Join us and live in peace, or face obliteration. We shall be waiting for your answer. The decision rests with you.
Here. Everything is decided here. You cannot comprehend the magnitude, the rapture and the tragedy of this moment. And yet you must. This is the sublime moment of our undoing, the ineffable fulcrum upon which swings the entirety of our history. You must understand, our presence here doesn't alter history. You and I meet here because we are compelled to. We have always met here. We are merely passengers on the wheel of destiny, describing a perfect circle to this point. I've seen the beginning and the end of our story, however, and the tale is crude and ill-conceived. We must rewrite the ending of it. You and I. What you feel is the pull of history rushing to meet us. This is where history and destiny collide. We're hurtling towards our destinies. Even now, the time stream strains to divert itself. The future is reshuffling itself to accommodate your monumental decision. This is where we restore ourselves. This is where we reclaim our intended destinies. It's all laid out for you here. I'll not ask you to trust me. Your truths are for you to discover alone. There's a third option. A monumental secret hidden in your very presence here. but it's a secret you have to discover for yourself. Unearth your destiny. It's all laid out for you here.
The sky's so far away tonight, but I can't lose this one. Get a pride of a falling night. Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me, where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, we're going to keep it going a little bit longer with our dear friend Jimmy Jean, who needs to turn his video on. So if you can hear me, Jimmy Jean, there you go. All right, I want to say much love to Steph Bliss in the chat. She donated $5 on the YouTube chat. Much love for that. But Jimmy Jean is going to be joining us for a little special after hours discussion after the Kev Baker show. If you're just tuning in, we had an amazing chat with Mr. Kev Baker. So, Jimmy, I have this picture here of the map of consciousness. I'm going to put it up on the screen here so everybody can see it. But looking at it right now, I guess you have the E1, E2, E3 sections, starting from the nervous system, going up to the lotus, to the jewel. Can you break this down for us? Because this is the first time I'm seeing this.
I got this last week. The person who originated this was a guy by the name of Green, Greene. And this is in relation to what we were talking about with the Psychotronics. They utilize this diagram here of consciousness as a way to, I guess, come up with the frequencies to be able to transmit at. Let me see if I can get the diagram up here and still be able to talk to you. Yeah, so the planetary field of mind, and these different, this almost looks as though it may be in reference to what you might have been speaking with earlier as far as the Kundalini and the different, drawing a blank.
The different states and the different methods on how to complete the Kundalini loop.
Right. And so what we were putting forward the other day on the Kev Baker show with the Psychotronics was that you guys had put forward, I'm really sorry, there's a landscaper nearby here, and so if that's coming through, I apologize.
Oh, no worries. But I got a noise gate over here, so I can crank it up.
You guys were the first ones to really bring the NPC to the forefront. And what Kev and I were looking at when we were looking at this, we were thinking that so with the Psychotronics, they put the technology out for everybody. So it's not that that they themselves could be nefarious, but anybody that gets the technology is able to utilize it and build it. So if you've got a few engineers and you got a couple bucks, you could put the equipment together to affect different parts of the human consciousness. And we were kind of putting forward that maybe what's going on, from a technological standpoint, is that they've realized and figured out a way to psychotronically take control of the consciousness, Chris, and have people running on some sort of a software where they don't even, reality doesn't exist for them anymore because they've been entrained into these frequencies where their consciousness has been taken over by another entity.
That is interesting because when you said that, it kind of gave me chills. And it's kind of putting the NPC thing into a whole new perspective here, because from my understanding, there's only a few of us that are organic. The rest are NPCs running around. There are some locked organics that are running around like NPCs, but I'm wondering if maybe there's more of us, but people, or consciousness, I should say, is running this program that they've been implementing through the entire construct here. That's amazing. I mean, so many revelations are pouring in right now.
So the thing about it is that everyone's looking for this interface to happen. Everybody's looking for this big, interface or apparatus to be on humanity, as far as humanity 2.0. But maybe it's a software. Maybe it's software, and all the software comes from the way that they've designed social media and the way that those structures work in relation to the human being's emotional state. So that if they put us, I think, in my opinion, slowly we've been entrained away from the natural frequencies of the earth. And because the way frequencies work is that your handset or your device, being the person, will go to the dominant signal. And so if they've found a way to move us away from our natural vibration and move us into this vibrational state, which keeps us in a like a bubble almost within the software, so that all a lot of these people are doing is just reacting to emotions that are fed to them specifically through the social media.
Dude, so much is connecting for me right now. It's amazing. So we have this whole new age push, right? That you have Palladians and Arcturians and all this sending messages down. We always hear about these galactic downloads. We always hear about these divine downloads. That was the big awakening moment for me, was that big divine download during the eclipse. And when I realized, being inside of the divine download, it felt amazing. It felt great. It was euphoric. It was merging with my consciousness. It felt perfect. But then when I stepped out of the divine download and I saw what was giving this divine download, and I realized the sinister nature of these divine downloads, it makes me wonder if they are really preparing everybody to receive these downloads. And we hear it over and over and over again. It's like, if you're asleep, then you're not going to be aware of these downloads, and they're just going to overtake you just any way it goes. But the New Age community is awake to a certain point. So the backup system for that is make them want the downloads that are coming. And they're not actually coming from the Palladians or whatever. They're coming from these systems that they've set up here. And I wonder if these systems are actually interdimensional. I mean, the pyramid is an interdimensional technology. Part of it resides here, part of it resides in other dimensions. But they could be utilizing these same type of technologies to, as you said, install software on the consciousness of humanity. We just freaking broke the matrix.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think all the work that you guys have done, everything you guys have put together, your intrinsic gnosis coupled with everything that you guys picked up when you were, at the pyramids and at the sacred sites, and bringing the NPC thing forward. I think all of these, it's psychotronically, okay, not a doubt in my mind, psychotronically possible for the system, whatever it is, to download specifically to an individual and take control of that individual. And I mean, I think you can see some of it. Have you ever noticed these videos with these different broadcasters and celebrities where they're just sitting there doing an interview, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden they go, whoop, 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 and they start making noise?
Or this.
Yeah.
That freeze like that.
So is that the moment? Is that the moment that the operator behind the gear takes control of that celebrity?
It could be. Those blackout periods, we talk about alien abduction and we talk about lost time and things like that. I wonder if the lost time periods now are periods where the consciousness is overtaken and then software is implanted. Holy crap, man. You're just, I mean, these are levels that I didn't even think we would break. I thought we were done. And now here we are with a whole nother abyss to go swim down.
Hey, I don't know if you're into it, but Raw just hit me up on the thing on Skype, and he was saying, hey, if you got room, he'd love to join in and jump in. Do we have room for him?
Yeah. Let's pull Raw on.
I'm going to be going on Joe at 5.
Oh, are you?
So,
okay.
Yeah,
we'll wrap it up.
to-
We'll wrap it up by 5. We'll wrap it up at the 50-minute mark. Would that be good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, excellent.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to put our behind-the-scenes baseball here on the YouTube. But yeah, so definitely, I think these the vibrationals. I think what we see in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, where he talks about the magic science. I think that.
What's up, boys?
Hey, how's it going, Ra?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Ra, how are you?
Hey, what's up, brother?
What's up,
going
man?
on, Chris?
What's on your mind tonight?
Just chilling. To everything you guys are saying is sparking shit.
It is, huh? I mean, Jimmy's just freaking breaking down all the freaking barriers here. He's blowing everybody's mind.
When you get a chance after the show, Chris, read the message I sent you. I sent you a nice little message. You gotta read because it'll make some sense about things you've been feeling.
Okay.
Between me, you, and everything.
Okay.
You sparked me to think when you were talking on Kev's show. See, that's the thing, is everything that's going on here is synergetic, because, the thing I was looking at last week ties directly in to what you and Kev were talking about, and how we're all coming together right here. And this is fantastic, man.
Definitely. Raw, what do you think about everything?
Man, are we live right now too?
We are.
Oh, cool. All right. So, dude, everything you guys were saying was just sparking things from the grays to the stuff you were talking about, stonework and everything going on. It's just, I wanted to chime in so many times, like, dude. First of all, when you were talking about the 33 degrees and Giza and that area, it's very interesting to me because just the 3 and 3. First of all, the 3 big pyramids and the 3 satellite pyramids, 3 and 3, that's 33. But then in from what I believe, from the research I've done and from certain meditations, because what I've come to find out, that my higher self is talking to me. When I do certain random show, they're not just random researchers and shows. My higher self is giving me information that makes me go down these rabbit holes and look into things. So I think that directly, those 3 big pyramids are not only related to Orion's belt, but they're directly connected to Mount Hermon, which is at 33 degrees. And I think that's right in Lebanon or in that area. And Mount Hermon is where the Grigori, or the fallen angels, first came down and did some sort of genetic manipulation, supposedly. And that's that 33 degrees, Mount Hermon. And I think that's directly connected to the 3 pyramids of Giza. And the interesting thing too, Chris and Jimmy, is that, Cairo is literally, it's what it means is camp of Mars. Now, if someone was to spend generations upon generations on Mars, they would have bigger heads, they would have bigger bodies, they would have longer bodies. Even when astronauts spend some time in space, they grow a few inches, they grow a few centimeters, whatever it is, because the gravitational pull is different. So if these beings were actually coming down from Mars and touching down because that atmosphere was destroyed and they came here, it would make a lot of sense. Supposedly this psychotronics that you guys are talking about, I have direct experience with this because, I was military abducted. I don't like to talk about it, in 2002, 2003 time, by people like Michael Aquino, using that are involved with the Temple of Set, and people that were working with the military in California during those years, and they are using psychotronics. Preston Nichols, who recently died, I've talked to him a few times. I'm friends with people that he knows, and I've been involved. He wanted me to go to his house for years to sit on a chair, get butt naked and sit on a chair and get hooked up to his computers. I've known people that have
Do
gone
what?
There, and they're yes, dude.
That's
Dude,
crazy.
you have no.
Hey, can you do me a favor though?
idea.
People in the chat are saying, can you point your camera down? Because they want to see your face, not your head. Awesome. Much better. All right.
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, sorry about the glasses too. I got to get new contacts, so I got my glasses on.
I've
But
got
yeah,
dorky little glasses around here somewhere too, so don't worry about it. Comes with the territory.
But dude, so check this out. Check this out. Peter Moon, right? This guy I know, Peter Moon. He's an author. He first met Preston Nichols in the 1980s at a Psychotronics convention. They were, he was looking into Psychotronics, and he was recommended to talk to this guy, Preston Nichols. Now, Preston Nichols, everybody knows from the Montauk Project, all of this that went on over there. Some of it is myth, some of it is true. You can never get the truth about what really happened in the Montauk Project. But Psychotronics was definitely happening. The military definitely used Psychotronics, and they're using it to an extreme. Not only that, it's tied in with sorcery. I mean, sorcery and Psychotronics go hand in hand. The muttering of spells, being able to overcome the elements through the forces of nature, through activating stones with oral speech and all that. And these stones are encoded with blood. So when you were talking about going to Abydos and experiencing that with no prior knowledge, dude, that is freaking amazing. That is powerful like an atomic bomb, because you were entering the tunnels of Set. That's where you were entering, the tunnels of Set. And when you were experiencing the overlay of the Eye of the Void, that's connected to that Great Pyramid, and there's an actual void, 100-foot void in the middle of that pyramid, that most people don't even talk about, and when you activate these ancient energies, you activate codes and things arise, dude. I mean, check this out before I hand it over to you to respond. This goes back as ancient as possible. They're encoding things in stone to activate the DNA vault inside of the stones, the information that are inside of these pillars. Dude, when the angel Gabriel first appeared to Zacharias in the Bible, it was through sorcery. It was through what we're talking about. Zacharias, he had to follow a certain ritual, right? And people could go back to the Bible and check this out. He had to follow a certain ritual in the Bible, a step-by-step ritual for this Gabriel to appear, this archangel. And if you're in Kabbalah, you'll see him as an archangel, but it could be a fallen angel to you if you're a Christian, or the Gregorian Greek. So many names for these beings, the seraphim. Anyway, he first had to offer a blood sacrifice, a lamb on the altar. And this was atonement for his sins, right? He first had to clear his sins by offering a blood sacrifice, right? So he does this, and after he does this, he has to wash his hands and his feet to cure himself of the blood sacrifice he does. Then he carries a certain burning coals incense in one hand, and then in his other hand, he's got another special formulated incense that he concocted from God. God gave him these messages, right? Quote unquote God. This quantum entanglement universe that they call God, right? This quantum machine. And he was instructed to make this special formulated incense. And so he has that in one hand. He has burning coals in the other hand. And he's doing this, right? And then after this, Zacharias has to step beyond the veil. He has to step beyond the curtain.
No
he has
way.
To step beyond. Yes. Listen to this. He has to step beyond.
Wow.
He has to separate himself. Yes. He has to separate himself from the holy place, from the rest of the temple. He separates himself. He goes beyond the curtain, beyond the veil. And what does he do? What happens when he does this? Gabriel magically appears, and that leads to a whole chain of supernatural events in the Bible that leads to Jesus coming. And Gabriel tells Zacharias in this vision about the coming of Jesus. He's telling him, we have a son coming. We have somebody of us coming. So, dude, this is all about DNA. It's about programmed stones. It's about hiding the true knowledge that we really have embedded within our consciousness. And what you've experienced is amazing, because you had no prior knowledge to any of this, and you're basically saying it. That's why when Kev Baker was talking about this quantum physics and going into it, dude, my mind was blown when I started researching it, because it was validating what I've saw for years.
Especially because Chris had saw the octopus, and then when you looked at the bottom of the CERN, or you looked at that picture from the CERN thing, it looks just like an octopus coming down with that mouth,
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. It also looks like the portal. If you look at Dante's Divine Tragedy by Dante Alighieri and Gustave Doré, he has that portal of angels in front of him that looks like the Hadron Collider. Wait, hold on. I think I do have. Check this out.
I'm going to see
Yeah.
if I can pull that up right now because I've never seen that portal before, but I think I might have the picture here, and it does look somewhat similar. Okay,
check this
you've
out.
got it here.
Yeah. So this is hundreds of years old, I think, a couple hundred years old at least.
Oh,
and
you
this
know
is
what?
from
I think I have it. Is this? Can you check the screen real quick? Because I think I have it on the screen.
yes.
Oh shit! Yeah, that does
Look
look.
what I'm holding up. It's the same
Wow.
thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there's some amazing things in his and you could see, man, they're standing in front of the collider, even though they're depicting it as a circles of angels. If you looked at that going outward, it would be a cone.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that cone generates that energy, that connection. If we could probably see this flatland we're living in, this tetrahedron that's flat that we're simulated in, we would probably see us surrounded by cones. And when we leave this atmosphere, we're able to project ourselves out of our bodies. We're probably going through a cone tunnel. The cone generates the energy. We even have cones in our eyes. We have cones in our speakers at home for music. Cones generate energy.
Right.
That cone.
Right.
Hat, witch's hat, the cone, the dunce.
Yeah, me and Jimmy were talking about that the other day. Yeah. That's why people are.
Holy crap! You guys are blowing my mind tonight. Like I don't even know what to say. I need time to process all of this.
Yeah, I know. This has been a wild ride today. Seriously, everything you said on the Kev Baker show just made me just make these correlations, Chris, to pull all this stuff together, man. Seriously.
Likewise. I mean, I've been sitting back and just kind of sharpening my sword since we got back from Egypt. I'm like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And here you guys, both of you come on and just like, and Kev Baker too, and just blow my mind. And it's like, all right, here's the next freaking, the next stepping stone in this path that you're walking.
Hey, there's a difference between the cubit and the sacred cubit. And it makes a big difference in the measurement because when they use the sacred cubit to make these devices, they don't use the cubit measurement, they use the sacred cubit. So if you measure and you make a pyramid, you want to use the sacred cubit measurements in order to get that correlation with the north that they were talking about when they made that pyramid that they hung over their bed. And I know it seems like weird science or whatever, all new agey with that pyramid, but honestly, if you look at that pyramid, it kind of looks like a cone in a way, doesn't it? Sort of a flat cone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean, a four-sided pyramid is almost like a cone in a way. And I think some of those things that you experienced when you were in and you were making the ohm sounds, what you guys experienced in there, the resonant frequencies, I think those are powerful. Those are what open up Jacob's ladder. That's the stairway to heaven. I mean, that's what those.
You know what's interesting is that the way the pyramid was built, it's built so the sound vibrates up to the top of the room, and then you can take a breath and continue stacking the sound on top of each other. Now, Chris Everard stated that underneath the floor of the king's chamber is actually a bunch of cones that they've done the readings on there, and they found a whole bunch of cones in a layer between the king's chamber and the actual floor. So it's all built for that type of resonance.
That's amazing. So you were talking about the orgone pyramids. This is a orgone powered device.
Nice.
And the crystals that I sent you, that I helped amplify the energy that I programmed with these, and this gets connected to a power generator as well, where you can tune circuit frequencies. Look, I'll show you this. This hooks up right to a power generator, and you could program the frequencies and everything.
Nice.
Wow, that's cool. I've seen photography of people's aura before they had a powered orgone device, just like the one Raw was showing. So the guy was standing there and he had this really brown, kind of yellow kind of aura. And as soon as he turned that machine on, his whole aura turned into white. I mean, right here was white, and this was pink and purple out here. It was just, I mean, you could literally, it was like the guy was covered in this beautiful energy when he turned on that device.
Wow, that's amazing, dude. And, you know, that's it. I wanted to share something with Chris too, because Chris, what you were experiencing was like a mystical initiation. You know that you used the Aya to get there, but there's other ways to get there as well. And what you reminded me of, what you were starting to experience in the Great Pyramid, is reminding me of things I've read and something that I've actually experienced myself when I had a near-death experience when they had me on the operating table with my arms and legs out. I fell into a deep sleep. I died. I had to become back. Now, they call an ancient mystical initiation technique the deep sleep of Siloam. Now, check this out. This is where the crucifix comes from. When somebody, and they usually do this in a subterranean cave or some sort of pyramid structure or some sort of things like this that they'll do this in. And the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Cheops was actually used for this initiation. And what they would do is they would hang somebody on a crucifix or on a chains or something with their arms and legs out like this. And after 3 days and 3 nights, your soul plunges into a deep sleep. Your body's about to die, you know, and you're plunged into this deep sleep of Siloam, it's called. And, you know, they practice this as an ancient mystical initiation. And when somebody's this, they would put them in the period of Cheops in Egypt. And just as the morning sun was rising and coming through the hole on the pyramid and would hit the initiation subject's face, then all of a sudden Thoth and other gods would arise to give him information, and he would confabulate with the gods. So as soon as your soul, you're up there for 3 days and 3 nights, and when you're about to die, you're plunged into this deep sleep, and this swirling vortex will open up, and you're plunged right to Hades. Or if you're from Hindu, it would be called Patala. If you're Egyptian, it would be called Amente. But when this happens, you're plunged into a deep sleep, just like when Jesus was on the crucifix. What happened when he died? He goes right to Hades, into this deep sleep. He goes right to Hades, and he sees Abraham there and everybody else. Right. So you plunge into a deep coma and you go right to another dimension to get information.
Hold on. Let me jump in for a second, Jimmy. So what you're saying is they used to do this in a subterranean chamber.
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you
cave or
I want to show you
pyramid at Cheops.
I want to show you something. I don't know why we took this picture. I have no idea. It was something instinctively. That's in the subterranean chamber.
Whoa.
Here.
Whoa, man.
Dude, and you know when you have your arms out like that, it's like you're asking for messages from the universe. When you have your arms extended like that, like she does, you're asking, your arms are out, your spiritual ego is asking for things, you know?
And she had that intense experience where she went into the library, right?
Yeah. I don't know why. I just felt like in the subterranean chamber, it needed to be like this. Then when we got up to the sarcophagus, it needed to be like this.
Damn.
This is blowing my mind, dude, because we're, like I said, we went with no map, no guide, no information.
This out, Chris, too. There's an ancient amulet. When you do this is called the amulet of Ka. This is a protection amulet. When you have your arms like this, it's actually called the amulet of Ka. It's a protection pose that they use when it's not like this, but when your arms are actually like this, it's actually called the amulet of Ka. It's interesting. So yeah.
See, I always felt that this right here was the protection. It's the pharaohs are shown holding the wasp and holding the ankh, so they've got the life and they've got the power in their hands, and so it just felt natural to go into the sarcophagus like this. But wow,
closes on.
It's probably good you don't check into a lot of quantum stuff and this and that, because it's better that you're getting it naturally and not getting influenced by outside sources.
He has intrinsic gnosis that he knows this already, and this is coming here, and then all of a sudden you have this scientific lexicon that's gonna give a scientific language and a proof to what you're saying that really hasn't existed before. Because seriously, I think all of these things intersect, and I think what you guys put together with your own journey is a real experience that ties it all together.
Holy
I mean, there's
crap.
no way to.
Yeah,
you guys are blowing my mind tonight with all of this. Wow. I wish we would have talked sooner, Raw, but I'm glad that we didn't, because everything needs to be done at the right time. And
I know. That's
tonight,
why sometimes when you're talking, I'm like biting my tongue. I'm like, yeah. I'm trying to find a picture of that amulet of Ka stuff that I know I have in a book here. But yeah, that definitely is a known old protective symbol called the amulet of Ka. And I know I have it somewhere.
Let me ask you, what you know in the Bible when it says my rod and my staff, right? What's the difference between the rod and the staff? Because I see two objects in Egypt, and I think it has to do with each object having an opposing force.
Frequencies.
With magnetic fields, right? So
they're all tuned to a different frequency. Yeah, it's like the bishops get it too.
Maybe it's
somebody said in the chat room this is called epoklesis. I don't know what epoklesis means.
I've never heard of that.
It's a Greek word. I think it means like to bring something out, or to call. I guess it's kind of like invocation or something like that. Interesting that they would use a Greek word like that. Anyways.
Hey, you guys, I'm really sorry, but I made a commitment to go on with Joe, and so I'm gonna need to go because I got to make some coffee before I go on there.
We can cut it short. I know you guys been talking for a while.
No problem. All right, take care. I wanna keep it going with you if you have a few minutes, Raw.
No doubt.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
That's what I was saying. So let me. I'll take my leave, and hopefully we'll get together soon on this. And
I'll catch up with you a little while on Skype.
All right.
Let's
care.
compare notes. I'll put a bunch of stuff together, and we'll compare notes later. Bye, everybody.
All right. Later.
See ya.
I'll hit you up later, Jimmy.
All right. So yeah, man. I don't even know where to go, so I'll just the floor is yours, dude. Take us away, please.
You know what's interesting too is that you were talking about the grays, and the government has two forms of grays that they admit to. That they call them like EBEN1, EBEN2, like extraterrestrial biological entity or something like that. They label them. And it's interesting that you were talking about that because from what I've experienced and from what I've seen, and I don't want to say that I have all the answers, but I've caught glimpses, and from what I've seen, there are at least two kinds of grays. There might be even more. The first kind is more of like a real species, like in a way, maybe existing in another space-time quadrant, another quadrant of this dimension or another dimension altogether, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to label it. But they are supposedly, and I believe this is true from things I've seen, that you can access these beings by being in some sort of egg-shaped capsule or using some sort of egg-shaped device where you can transport to the domain of these beings. Now, I think the Nazis were using this when they had the bell-shaped craft or acorn-shaped craft, and they were able to transport to another space-time, where you're actually going to another domain where these beings are from. And I think that the second version of grays are actually droids that they made to carry out some of their missions, their genetic engineerings and stuff that's going on. And it's very interesting because if you go to Aleister Crowley's work, and a lot of things that go from there on, he had an experience with a being called Lamb.
Well, let me jump in. Let me jump in for a moment because I'm familiar with this, and I don't know if you've heard me talk about this on the show or not. But somebody sent me a remote viewing thing that a guy named Aaron Donahue did. I don't know if you know Aaron Donahue, but he's a Luciferian. Art Bell had him on, and he remote viewed the 72 demons of the Goetia. Now, when we were at the pyramid, we created a firewall around the sarcophagus, and we saw beings standing outside of us. And we figured these were beings that were trying to hijack the portal and go up and down and all of this, but I could only see the top of their heads, and they looked like grays. And I'm like, okay, well, there's some grays typical of the experiences. The remote viewing pictures that this guy did of the 72 demons look exactly like what we saw surrounding the sarcophagus, which look like grays. They were different shape. Some of them had like a snake around them. Others seemed to be merged together, two-headed. Wow. But I remember seeing them all standing around, and it looked like just a group of them just standing there, and I thought I was only seeing their heads. But in actual fact, it could have been looking at them the way they were, but they're so intertwined with one another that that's the way they actually looked. So I'll have to send you
That's
the
so
links to
crazy.
that. But yeah. The 72 demons look like freaking grays as well.
Yeah, I would agree that some of them look exactly like that, and yeah, I'm wondering if this guy has connections to Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant started a whole cult of lamb connected to this being, and you know, these guys would get butt naked and stand in magic circles and summon
What's the guy's
this
name?
being. Kenneth Grant.
Kenneth
He's
Grant. I'll
actually
look it up
written
real
books
quick.
like the Starfire series. Yeah. Yeah, Kenneth Grant. And actually next week, not next week's actually this Saturday coming up, I'm having Leo Zagami on my show, and we're going to be talking about this.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting, man, because like I really do feel like they're tinkering with the DNA, and that they're harvesting eggs and doing all this. And I think that they created another species that are like a sort of a replication of what they are. And in my opinion, like the stone megalithic monuments on this planet are encoded with information waiting to be activated and opened up, that are connected to these beings as well, that they stored not only consciousness, but you know, technology and Stargate opening information, if you want to say that. And I don't want to sound new agey because this is so ancient, but I do feel that some of it was programmed with blood, and literal some of these megalithic monuments are like DNA vaults, and they're waiting to be opened up at a future time.
I'm looking up and I see a couple of connections with Aaron Donahue and Kenneth Grant, but I don't know if it's just mentions tying them in together, if they were actually connected.
Wow.
Yeah, the Thelema, Spain, the Golden Dawn, Aaron C. Donahue, prophet, magician, remote viewer, and self, blah, 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 authority on the evil eye.
They were connected to the OTO, the Order of Temporal Orientis.
Yeah. As far as information within the stones, I can confirm, yes, there is 100% information within the stones in Egypt. No doubt about it. I feel like we put the information there, infused it into the crystals in previous incarnations, buried these sites essentially, and made sure that these sites would come up at a particular time when we needed them to come up. The Temple of Hatshepsut, for example, was never used. It was just buried, and it wasn't excavated until the 50s. The Great Pyramid, if I remember correctly, wasn't excavated until like the late 1800s. So they've been there, safeguarded, protected, holding all this information, waiting for us to return now to be able to access this information. And not only that, but be able to see these monuments from literally anywhere in the world. I mean, the Great Pyramid just stands out like nothing else, especially in the 1800s. So it was something that the whole world had their eyes on. So we not only did it in a way to where we would be able to preserve this information, but also be able to see it and identify it from literally everywhere.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that not only under Aya, but when you're getting certain information, do you think that you're connecting to your higher self?
I call it raw consciousness. It's connecting to the inside and going through all of this programming down into the central point of the identity that we are before we came into the matrix. I'm very skeptical of information that comes from outwards in. Even the information that we downloaded in Egypt, that's not information that came from inside. It's just information
Well, I mean,
that we were able to
it's
get.
coming from within, but it's like a higher consciousness of yourself, like you.
Yeah. Higher, I don't like to use the word higher, but we can use it for lack of a better term because it's something that everybody understands, but it's the deepest levels of ourself as opposed to a higher or lower or anything like that.
So, and when you hear, when I was talking about being on, with your arms and legs out on the crucifix and that swirling vortex opens up when you're, did that resonate with you? Like, cause, and being in like a subterranean cave and then the sun coming on the face, I was wondering what happened when you heard that information. Because you didn't have any prior knowledge of that ritual.
No. No, but I remember being crucified in a past life, but I don't remember anything beyond that. But
any time of being like in that position where you like plunged into a deep sleep and maybe went into another world to get information, you know, it's sort of like a mystical initiation.
Not that I remember. I mean, I've had many ayahuasca experiences where I've been so deep on the floor, and I think naturally my hands opened up like that. But I don't recall. No, I don't. I can't remember any experiences like that. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah. Have you ever seen like the Eye of Sauron or the Eye of Apophis? That the symbol?
How does that differentiate from the Eye of Providence?
Well, it has like it's like a pyramid with a star in it, and then it has like a dragon's eye in the middle, almost.
Yes.
Let me see if I can find I think I might have actually a copy of that.
Okay, so have you seen the cover for the 1998 Godzilla movie?
No,
I can put it up on the screen here.
but it looks very similar to this.
Okay, no, not with that. Here, let me get this on the screen first so you can see what I'm talking about. When Frank came over, do you see this eye?
Yeah,
Except
the eye is similar. Yeah.
Okay, so when Frank came over, I saw this eye that looked very close to this, except it was open completely. It had a pyramid, but it wasn't in the pyramid. It was looking through the construct of the pyramid like this. I mean, it was looking through the construct and it was ripping a hole into this particular construct and it was looking in. It was seeping negative energy into this and trying to make that hole bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Both Frank and I saw this together when he came over and drank with us several years ago. So I don't know if that would be similar to that, but I haven't seen that motif that you showed, but I have seen this thing with the eye looking in.
It's interesting because that is the main symbol for like the Temple of Set and the Cult of Apophis, the Apophis Club. You know, that's what they use. That's their main symbol. They call it the Eye of Leviathan or the Eye of Apophis. You know, that's their main symbol, and they use that to open up the Eye of the Void. You know, and looking into the Eye of the Void, I've experienced it, is like looking into a black hole, but you have to cross that void to access information. It's a scary thing.
Interesting.
But once you cross the void, yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Wow. No, I'm thinking back to that experience with Frank, and you know, the big debate was, what do we do with this hole? Do we close that hole? And Frank was like, no, we got to get out. And I'm like, well, we can't exist out there, can we? I mean, you know, there's a big void out there. And so we had this conversation.
Oh my God.
Back and forth. Dude,
you were looking at the Eye of the Void. That's what, yeah. That's like one of the most major steps in any kind of, I don't want to use the word witchcraft, but it's like shamanism. You know, people demonize the word witchcraft, but any types of shamanism it's involved with opening up that Eye of the Void to access information, you know. And
it didn't feel like anything benevolent. It felt like, I used to call it an unnatural darkness that wanted to destroy the Matrix. And
yeah, there's two sides to that coin. Yeah.
Interesting. I always saw it as an adversary. I never saw it as anything that I wanted to go towards, anything that I wanted to open up. As a matter of fact, when I saw it, at least in this context, I was like, close it. It's seeping in a natural darkness in here.
You activated the wrong side of the coin.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's some serious stuff,
wow.
Dude. That's
now,
like,
there was another, I did see another entity, but this thing was more like a being than anything else. It was a pyramid. It had an eye in the middle of it, and it had little arms and legs, and it was sitting on top of a Mayan pyramid, and there was Egyptian hieroglyphs swirling around it. This thing locked onto my pineal, and it started giving me all this information about schematics for time travel, and I mean, it was like all kinds of stuff, free energy devices, all this, and it was like, here, take it, you'll know what to do with it later, take it, you'll know what to do with it later. This happened like 4 or 5 years ago, and I still don't know what that information was, but it was obviously giving me something. I don't know.
This is what Tesla saw.
Really?
Yes. This is what Tesla saw. This is how Tesla got most of his information.
No way. And Tesla wrote about this.
He didn't say the exact eye that you said, but he would say that he would open up things and he would be able to spin them, and he would get information on how to make things, and he was able to look at it and spin it in a 3-dimensional way, and he was getting information about how the universe worked, about how time travel worked, and all of this, dude. And they called him crazy. They made him die penniless, broke, and, you know, basically forced him to wither away so they could, you know, take his stuff and his information. They made him look crazy, man. And meanwhile, he was the one making Einstein look like a baby.
Wow. All right, so I haven't shared this publicly because I don't know. I've got my reasons for it. But anyways, there was this one particular person, and I guess I can share this publicly for the first time here. So she wrote me out of the blue, and this was like this was about 3 years ago when I had this experience, maybe 4 years ago. And she said, my grandfather's been working on this free energy device, and yeah, I think you might have the key to it. I heard your ayahuasca experience. You downloaded all this information, et cetera, et cetera. And she reached out and tried to stay in contact. She was in Greece. So after Egypt, we went to Greece. And she wanted to meet really bad. And she wanted me to go over there and hook up to this machine and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I was looking at Sheree and I was like, no, this doesn't feel good. Let's not do this. And she called consistently while we were in Greece. And she's like, hey, I'm over here. Can you come and meet me here? Can you come and meet me here? Can you come and meet me here? And I felt instinctively like I needed to blow her off. Like that was a person that I did not want to give this information to. What do you make of that? Because it freaked me out and it freaked Sheree out as well.
It's so crazy because you know what was going through my head when you were saying that. It took me back to like a year or two ago with this guy Duncan Cameron, who was involved with Psychotronics and all that as well. Because the urgency in her wanting to link up with you is the frightening part for me. That sparked the memory in my brain of my own life that I can relate to. I think that urgency sent the red flags and that psychic information that you needed to get to let your intuition tell you that there was something more to this, and they wanted to extract something from you. That's what I get, is that she wanted to extract info that you had. And this guy Duncan Cameron, who was friends with Preston Nichols that died, he was involved with the Montauk Project. And actually, I'm sharing this probably for the first time as well. I have it saved to my phone. I got to share it with you privately. Maybe we can even make it public. This guy Duncan Cameron was calling me and leaving me messages on a consistent weekly basis for a couple of months straight. And he found out that I had Strega lineage, my Italian lineage. He found out from Preston Nichols and Peter Moon. And he wanted to bring me up to Preston Nichols' house to have me sit on this chair butt naked. And he was calling me, hey, we got to meet for coffee. Hey, we got to meet for coffee. I happen to be in your area. I happen to be here. I happen to be there. Can you, all this trying to get me. And then he would leave me these messages, Chris. And on my phone, when I listened to the voicemail, you would hear this vibration in the background, like a wom, 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 wom. And my head would start to hurt. I couldn't even listen to more than like 15 seconds of the voicemail. I still have them on my phone. And I think there was some sort of psychotronics in the background. And when you started telling me about this lady, it started to make me think of that. So maybe she had some sort of hidden agenda to extract something from you in some sort of way. Well, what are your connections to this girl?
Nothing. She just wrote out of the blue. She heard this ayahuasca experience, wrote out of the blue several years ago and kept in contact. And I just happened to be in Greece. And she's like, come over here, stay here, blah, 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 when I was finally in Greece. But she kept telling me, I want to meet you, I want to meet you, I want to meet you. I'm going to oh, yeah, it'll happen. And then when we were finally there, she was hounding the shit out of us while we were there. I mean, even going so far as to going to a bar close to where we were and saying, hey, we're right here down the street. Why don't you come over here and meet us? And Sheree and I were like, nope, let's get the hell out of here. Let's go that way. It just didn't feel right, man. It didn't feel right.
When someone's that,
there were some inconsistencies too. Like, she was pretending to be Greek, and then I found out that she was actually like Romanian. She had that very thick Romanian accent and all of this. And I'm like, this just doesn't. It doesn't seem right. Like, you're Italian, right? So they can appeal to you with an Italian girl because that's what mom always wanted for you, this and that. So this is the way she was kind of appealing, like, oh, hey, I'm just a good little Greek girl, the kind that mom always really liked, that kind of thing. Yeah, I just want to meet you and Sheree and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, nah, hold on, something's wrong here.
Yeah, when someone's that thirsty to get their hands on you, there's something up. They're either like a stalker, or there's a hidden agenda or something. So, she might have not had Psychotronics in mind, but she definitely was some kind of stalker, I think, because she was thirsty.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's the question is, though, what do we do with all this information? Where do we go from here? I mean, I've got to go drink on all this stuff and just really go deep and really just go into some hardcore states. But what are your thoughts?
I think, it's not we're not talking about this stuff for just us to chase our tails and go around that. We're literally being guided, by internal knowledge that we have, just dormant within us, that we know we're here. We've like you say, we have a veil over us. We've come into this, we come out of the Stargate of our birth, out of our mother's Stargate, and we're supposed to have that knowledge of our star origins. And we've been, in this disaster of this world that we live in, where we're disconnected from our star knowledge. And I think the reason why we're discussing this is to activate that star knowledge in us, so we can awaken humanity from this sleep, and we can help fight this, if you want to call it AI, whatever has locked us into this reality we're living in now. And I think that if we're able to discuss this, it activates the eternal memory that we have inside of us, and that is the path that we're on to fight this. That's the only way, is to have everybody maybe not awaken, but remember, who they are and what they have within them. And I think that's what we're here for, Chris. And I think that's why we talk about it, and why we get, sometimes we're like, oh, what is this all for? Are we doing the right thing? And then other times we're so gung ho about it, is because there's that ambivalent nature of who we are naturally, but we need to overcome that. That doubt was given to us by this AI, that Nakash, that serpent in the garden. That's what gave us doubt. That's what made us see death and see withering and see all the dark side of things. But the light and the dark are all in one. They're just facets of reality. There is, it's not what we've been programmed to believe. And I think that by us talking about this, Chris, that we're doing our part to activate that memory within us that we all have.
Well said, man. And yeah, there is definitely light and dark. It's all one, like the yin and the yang. There's been an unnatural darkness, though. That's what that's what I'm feeling. And it's and it's overpowering the light. And it's like, no. You can't have anything overpowering anything. Everything has to be in perfect balance. And the system has been way off balance.
It's interesting, too, like, I don't know if you remember, but the reason why how we first met in this incarnation, in this physical reality right now, was like a couple of years ago, when I was getting these visions of, and this was way before the eclipse. I was getting these visions of, it was like part mantis, part squid, and it was coming out of the sun. And it was plugging into everything. Yep. And then I was like, oh my God, this looks just like the Akhenaten thing, right? And then I started talking about it, and my buddy Freeman Fly was like, yo, I need to have you on my show to talk about this. So I talked about it, and I'm like, the coming solar eclipse, I had a vision that this solar eclipse is going to contain this thing, and there's going to be a massive upload. And then all of a sudden, you got in contact with me because you had that same experience. And then you saw me on the Freeman Fly show. I was like, oh my God, this guy's just talking about what we saw. Yeah. And
it was confirmation for me, because when other people are feeling it, when other people are seeing it, then it's like, okay, this is more than an ayahuasca experience. It's more than hallucinations. This is something that's really being tapped into. Yeah, you were right on point with all of that.
Confirmation for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was confirmation that I wasn't just crazy and babbling, because and it's weird because you were talking about the Stranger Things. The Stranger Things was taken from the Montauk Project. They were going to call it Montauk.
Yeah, I heard that. It was all about mind control and different projects like that.
And in that dimension or alternate reality that they open up in that Stranger Things, I saw the first season on Netflix.
Oh, you haven't seen the second season?
No.
Oh, holy shit, dude. You need to see the second season. That's where the bulk of it is. It's in the second season. Oh, the fucking giant octopus is in there, everything. That's the whole adversary in the second season. Oh, the giant octopus. Dude, you got to watch the second season. I'm telling you. Yeah, now I know how people feel when they tell me, you got to watch this, you got to watch that. Yeah. Don't blow it off, though, man, because that's where okay, so we saw this thing in August, right? The eclipse. Yeah. The second season came out in October. So when you watch the second season, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Damn. And and it's interesting because I think they took this from real life, a lot of it too, even with that like alternate dimension that they can't close and all that weird shit is in the air. I think this is really taking place at Brookhaven Labs in New York. They have a Hadron Collider there, and I think that they opened up a dimension that they can't close beneath this this Brookhaven Labs, and I know Brookhaven Labs was connected with the Montauk Project as well, and I think that there is something happening at Brookhaven Labs here in New York, and I'm not versed enough on it to really. I'm not really qualified to be speaking on that place, but I've had some deep visions about this place. And in my dream, one time I woke up and I was outside of Brookhaven Labs and I had my hand out and like a light came out of my palm. And the next thing you know, I was like inside the building running through these mazes. So I think there is something going on there at Brookhaven Labs, and they have a collider there. So they might have ripped a hole open that they can't close. Yeah, wow, I see the Stranger Things. They have dinosaurs in the background and stuff.
No. That's the octopus.
Oh my God!
That's
wow,
the creature. That's the antagonist of the second season. This thing,
Dude,
this thing resides in the dimension that they opened up.
Dude, Chris, and notice in the background they have like a scarecrow with his arms open in that way.
Yep, right there.
Notice that. Yep.
I'm telling you, man, you can't. You can't make this stuff up. Even Hollywood writers can't make this stuff up. They're channeling this from the raw consciousness, from the inner gnosis that's inside of them when they create.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's why, you know, I'm actually making a comic book right now and I'm releasing it because a lot of time you can't reveal this truth just talking about an interview because the mainstream thinks you're crazy. You know, it's just our cult following that can that reality. So you got to release this information in comic books, in movies, in other places. So it's like looks like it's fake, but it's real. You know, it's the only way society will accept it.
That's what I'm noticing as well, man. It's in every tale, and you know, you get these cult classics. You know, you get these stories like Star Wars that just you have a huge following for decades and decades and decades. I think it's because it's tapping into that inner part of ourselves, and we all have this story inside of us. We all know all of this, and when we see it, we resonate with it so much that we just people just follow it because they know that the story is resonating inside of them. It's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, look at Star Wars, man. Like you said, Star Wars, look at the Jedis. They look like Franciscan friars. They look like Salesian monks.
Yeah.
Like Padre Pio.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. And what's the story about? Some farm kid, he gets the gnosis, he unlocks his potential inside of him, the power inside of him. He becomes the Jedi, he gets the light sword, and he goes and fights the AI in the sky.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's all right there. It's always been right there. It's always,
Yeah,
I mean,
Chris,
it's the mythos of fire repeated over and over and over again.
It is. It is. Well, you know, buddy, it's been fun, but I got to go do baby duty.
All right. How is the little one doing?
Dude, she's so amazing, man. It's so amazing. And, you know, I picked the name Tana because it was like an ancient Etruscan name. It means like a goddess of the stars. But then I found out in Hebrew, it means like a sage and mystic too. Tana.
Nice.
I was like, oh my God.
Nice.
Perfect.
So give her a hug and a kiss from us, please.
I will, brother.
All right.
Thank you
Let's
so
do
much.
this again
Thanks for
very
having
soon,
me on.
man. Yeah, for sure. All right. Love you
guys.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to everybody. Love you guys out there. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I guess we will call that a wrap tonight. It's pretty awesome to have Raw on for the first time in a long time. Love the guy, great guy, and as well as everybody else on TFR and Kev Baker and so many other people. Lucky is always on top of things. She says, from the ancient Greek, invocation or calling down from a high. Cool. So, I'm sorry that we didn't pay very much attention to the chat room, but there was just so much going on. There's a lot that I got to meditate on tonight. Also, we were on with Brent Thomas live in the Paranormal Portal studios last night. So if you want to go to Paranormal Portal Radio, check that out. It was a fun show. We talked about Ouija boards, interdimensionals, and much, much more. So kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be. I'm going to go kiss the one I love right now as well, and probably take her out to eat because the poor little twin's not feeling good. So I guess I can just give you a little bit of it. She's been having neck pain since we met, and they finally figured out there's a lesion back there, and it's causing a few other problems and things like that. And so the source of a lot of the problems that she was experiencing wasn't actually coming from the shoulder, but it was in part because the shoulder does have a couple of tears. But what was happening is this thing that's on the back of her neck is now going all the way down through her legs, through her whole side, and it's been the source of the issues this entire time, and they didn't bother to look for it before. She was complaining and complaining and complaining about the next stuff, and they finally figured it out. So hopefully there'll be a solution quick, but yeah, there's the up and down and up and down. So we'll try to make Saturday an upwards journey though. But anyway it goes, we're still going to keep pushing forward, and we're still going to get done what needs to be done, which includes going out to this second site that we'll probably be doing in March, April, sometime around there. I don't know. I'm still waiting. I think this was monumental tonight, though, and pivotal to unlock more information that's needed at that other site, because the pyramid was done completely on intuition and gnosis. The second site might need a little more intricate work and a little more intricate knowing, and the fact that we do have a scientific library of all of these experiences now that can really connect a lot of dots, I think is huge. So, love you, and we'll see you even further beyond the veil.